Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 332, part 2 of our two-part discussion on Rot World. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. I trust in Constantine, so says the sensei of the Whatnot Segulin and the Duke of You-Know.
How's it going, eh?
On this episode, we're going to be focused heavily on Frankenstein and Justice League Dark, touching on the 0 issues of both titles straight on through to the current issues of 14 on both titles, so it's a big, meaty discussion. We also discuss the annual number 1 of Justice League Dark. We have some great listener voicemails, and we are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, you can pick up this month Batman Gotham by Gaslight. This is a new edition trade paperback. It collects both Gotham by Gaslight and Master of the Future. These are the classic tales, Elseworlds tales, from the Victorian-era Batman. Brian Augusta and Mike Mignola art. It's just really classic material. It's $12.99 regularly, 50% off, only $6.49. If you've never picked this up, do yourself a favor, especially if you're a fan of the Elseworlds concept. I'm a huge fan of these books, and it's one that I'm really shouting out because I want to point people at this that may have missed this in the past. I also want to shout out that they are a Comixology digital partner. What that means is every time you do a purchase over there with any of your digital purchases, you earn 5% DCB service credit. So you're doing this shopping anyway. It's a great chance to support our sponsor and get something for yourself for free, doing purchases you're already going to do anyway. So I want to thank DCBService.com for continuing to support our show. Feel free to go to our Raging Bullets website and click on the links there to check out their website if you've never been there before. Amazing discounts. Over at InStockTrades.com, I want to shout out just some really cool trade paperbacks I'm noticing here. They've got Batman No Man's Land Volume 4 trade paperback. This is 50% off, only $17.49. iZombie, I was a huge fan of this series. Volume 4, Repossession, 50% off, only $9.99. Exo Manowar, I know this isn't DC, it's Valiant. They've been doing this relaunch. The brand new ongoing, it's 50% off the first trade paperback, only $4.99. There's amazing deals to be found there. Orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. They have this Cyber Monday sale going on right now where every trade paperback is 45% off from companies such as Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, IDW. They have this Earth Prime reboot where all DC and Marvels are 45% off. DC's archive editions are 50% off. It's a great opportunity with the holiday season coming up to save some money buying gifts for friends, and you can grab yourself a trade or two. That $50 adds up real quickly, and you can save yourself on shipping and support a sponsor of our show. So I want to thank DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com for supporting Raging Bullets. James, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotlines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics.
Spinning with great speed, the Flash creates a protective vacuum around himself.
Jim, for our first discussion, I want to talk about Frankenstein number 0. This is going to be the second of our two-part look at this whole Rot World storyline that's going on. And Matt Kindt is the writer. Alberto Ponticelli is the penciler, interiors, and cover, and I apologize for name butchery on that because I love the artwork. Wayne Faucher, inker, interior, and cover. Jose Villarrubia, colorist. Pat Brousseau, letterer. Hi-Fi on the color cover. Kate Stewart, assistant editor, and Joey Cavalieri is the editor. Frankenstein, Agent of Shade. This was a concept that was introduced first in Seven Soldiers, where Grant Morrison did this reworking of the Frankenstein concept in the DC universe and brought him in. And the whole point of that miniseries, when you hear Morrison interviewed, was to put out character concepts that hopefully people could use at some point and take the ball and just roll with it. Here is a great example of where this has evolved to be a concept that I just adore. I really enjoyed this series when it first launched. It was really good. As I've gotten to know the character more, it's become great. And I'm not discounting any of the previous issues. What I'm saying is this whole series has taken me on a gradual journey that I think was intended to be this way, to help us get to know Frank, to get to know his world. I went from seeing him as being this, like, tank of a beast where it was like this, badass warrior comic where, he's, smashing things and stuff like that, to recognizing his intelligence and nobility. Also really liking the mystery that has been introduced with this idea that each of his body parts would have some kind of DNA memory to them, for lack of a better way of putting it, I guess. Some resonance of the person that it was before. And this is something that would haunt Frank, but also make us as the readers wonder, at his core, who is Frank? What is the real Frank? And, is there like an independent entity that is Frank? Or is he one of the personalities that are in the body parts? And I love that mystery because I love the character, I love him, and I want to know more about him. And for a creative team to do that gradually, take a concept that before I was kind of like, I really enjoyed him in Seven Soldiers. I thought it was a cool concept. I'm a big fan of Seven Soldiers. But to then take it to another level, it shows that they followed exactly what Morrison wanted with these concepts. It shows the creativity of the writers that have been involved with this book since the beginning. Big Frank fan here. We don't talk about it enough on the show, and I'm glad we're having this opportunity.
Oh, big time. Frank has been just a wonderful character that when they announced the Frankenstein, series, okay, it should be kind of interesting. Then I heard a couple comments at panels, and it started to get me a little bit more, this should be a really cool ride. And as the series is going on, I'm really digging, Frank as a concept, Frank as a character, and all that development you were talking about the character, just all that was coming out. And it got me thinking when I was getting ready for today's episode about how last recording I said how much I really love Swamp Thing because he's just a really badass. And when you start thinking of badasses, Frank is the one that actually should really come to mind and got me wondering, the creature feature fight of the centuries, Frankenstein versus Swamp Thing. That is a battle I would love to see. Just on one hand, you got godlike powers of the green versus Frankenstein, who I think could kick anybody's butt. I'd throw him up against Superman, for just because Frank would figure out a way. And you talk about intelligence, you talk about just more than just being this Frankenstein smash. No, he's not. He is a complex warrior poet, and I really like getting that side of him and seeing all that come out.
There's something decidedly classic and yet fresh about bringing monsters back into superhero comics so prominently. On the good guy side of things, there's something tragic about them as characters. You look into the soul of these characters and, try to figure out how do they keep going on and how do they try to protect these people? What makes them keep trying to protect these people who are so decidedly different than them? I think there's a lot to be learned by those characters who can take all the differences we have from them and yet still find this way to carry on and to be something more and to see things a lot of times black and white that we don't. And I really like that about them. I think these are fresh books, and Frankenstein is one of those where you mentioned Swamp Thing, and I loved how you were comparing the two of them, how it's two very different. You on the surface you look at them and say, well, these are both monsters, but if you don't cut to the core of who they are, you don't see that they are so drastically different. I love how you pointed that out. That's what I love about them. When I read Swamp Thing, it's a very different book than reading Frankenstein. Both arguably are monster books, but they couldn't be more different, just like Batman is so drastically different than Superman. And I love that DC's embracing this. I love that the creative teams are embracing this because it's what's unique about the creativity of comics when you start telling different stories in these books. Frankenstein's one of those, I know this series is going to be ending. I'm thrilled the amount of run that they've given this because I feel like I really know this character now and I passionately want to see him somewhere. Obviously, from the issues we're reading in Justice League Dark, it looks like it's going to be there. The only reason why anytime we've had this discussion I've been question marking it is because he hasn't been officially inducted into the team. You know what I mean? He's staying there just because he's a good guy. And we'll talk more about this when we get to Justice League Dark. Obviously, a little quicker now because we're already talking about it at this point. But I can't help but discuss how passionately I want this character to appear somewhere. And that's a great thing about rolling out a character this way, too. Even if the solo series, for whatever reason, it didn't get the numbers that they wanted it to, and it shows that the creative team did a terrific job of making him matter to me. I want more. It's not, and the series isn't even done yet, and I'm worried about where I'm going to be getting my Frankenstein fix each month. That's important to me, and that's really the design of a cool character in a serialized medium like this. You need to be able to want more of the character. This is something that's well worth for anybody listening to this. You know, the trade program that DC's doing with the New 52, they've really been stepping up their trade game, which is, at this point in time, you need to do that, especially with digital releases, being able to pick up everything. Whether you read comics digitally or you read them in paper, this is a series. If you missed this, you are missing something very, very cool. Make sure to pick it up. And let's talk about why. Like this Soul Grinder thing, Jim. I think it's one of those things that I really enjoyed about the Zero issue was getting more of an idea of the makeup of Frank. I don't think we've had that before. And that's not a knock on anything. I think so much of the story that was told before needed to go where it did. By the time Zero hit, I really wanted to know the origin. Like, you know, I know the Mary Shelley Frankenstein story. I've seen the old black and white movies and all that. But how does it work in comics? Like, how are they viewing it? This Soul Grinder first gave me that idea of, is there a real Frankenstein? You know what I mean? Like, is there one sole central personality that's driving this? Or is it one personality that's dealing with and combating against these other ones? And do you have an idea on that? Where are you thinking on that? Because this is where my head's at right now. I'm enjoying that. Maybe you see it clearer than I do.
Well, I see the one Frankenstein. You know, I see there is, you know, he's a sum of his parts, but he's more than just the sum of his parts. Mm-hmm. There is, you know, by the end of this, we are going to see there is a soul inside of Frankenstein. Frankenstein may be a conglomeration of undead parts, and people may say he's undead, living dead, or whatnot. But to me, I think we have an actual living entity. Now, it's a different definition of living. You know, you can't, you know, it's not a normal, he's not by any stretch of the means a normal person, but I think we're going to see there is Frankenstein. There is that one character. There is that one persona that's in there. And I think it's the energies from all the other body parts, energies from all the other souls, everything that came together, and it's along the path it was created. It's, you know, do you receive your soul or do you earn your soul based on your actions? And I think we're going to see with Frank, he earned his based on who he is and what kind of person he is. And I think that's where everything's going to play out through Rot World. We're going to learn that Frankenstein isn't the monster. Frankenstein he's his own entity, but I don't want to call him a person because he's technically not. But he's not a soulless creature anymore. We're going to see exactly that there's something more to Frank. He's a different category now.
And that's how I'm choosing to view it too. And do you take it then that these other personalities that are manifesting themselves that he sees are like his conscience almost, being able to pull back into memories of his past, various pasts, because the body parts would have different various pasts, drive him to fight against them, to be some, you know, if they're an evil past, drive him to fight past them to be something more? Is that how you're taking some of that?
Yeah, he's got to fight through. You know, he's going to have these influences. He's going to have these, you know, urges, yearnings, or just, you know, stuff that's going to pull from his other entity, the other existence within him. But there is still just that one path that's him. There's that one belief that's him. And that's what's going to have to push through. And that's where we're actually going to see that there is one persona. There is one true Frankenstein. And that's the path that guides it, pushes aside the other stuff.
Now, here's the thing, and this adds some weight to what you're saying. An estimated 50 victims were used to power the generator, enough to bring ancient Frankenstein online. Needless to say, the results, while fantastic, left collateral damage that was unacceptable. Now, I guess the reason why I'm even reading the part about the 50 parts to bring him online, it does designate that you're bringing to life this creature using these personalities, these people, their souls. So you're bringing something unique of its own nature, like you're mentioning, to life. Which, I guess that's how I'm choosing to read it. I wanted to talk about that because I think it's an interesting concept that Victor Frankenstein really did create life in this comic in the way that he did it. There's an after effect of everything, and that would make me a little angry too. You've got 50 screaming voices inside you because we're seeing that that's in the background somewhere. Very, very deep, because Frank doesn't seem, like a lot of times when we see it, Frank doesn't seem aware that that was there. It's something that he's learning about himself. But I wonder if that doesn't drive a lot of his rage against injustice that we see, knowing that this was done. It's on a subconscious level. I don't know. I really dig the character because I probably think way too much and way too far into him. But I mean, that's a sign of a good comic, because I think with any good comic, with any good novel, with any good movie, you do that. You care enough that, like, you want to know the things that aren't on screen. And Frank's one of those books where I want to know.
Well, right from the beginning, we see the code of conduct. We see the code of honor. And I like the fact, granted, he rips some guy's arms off. And that's how he gets his sleeveless jacket, which is actually a cool story, in my opinion. But so there is a little bit of ferociousness. There's a little bit of a monster. But when he's confronted with, when he confronts Victor Frankenstein's wife, he doesn't go on a slashing, killing spree. As a matter of fact, he goes out and protects the other people who were released into the mountains because the other experimental wolves would chew them alive. So these are people that Frank has no reason to protect, no reason to do anything for, but he goes out and he protects them. And I think right there, and that's his right from day one birth, we see the code of honor. We see the code of conduct. And that's something that I really was glad to see, that there is the ferociousness. Yeah, there is still the Frankenstein ripping people's arms off, which, again, I'm going to mention again because that is such a cool scene. But you do get the honor. You do get the character, and not just character as in but the personal character of a guy that I would call my friend. This is somebody whose back I would watch just because while I'm watching his back, he's watching mine.
I would love for him to respect me. Because and here's a reason why. This scene you're talking about with the wife, I love the dialogue here. Because she's sitting there, where is my husband? You're a... And he cuts her off and says, monster, if that is how I'm to be known, then so be it. But the true monster, I believe, is the one you call husband. It is he that has killed innocents and loosed this evil into the world. Best you look inside for your monster, woman. And in that moment, she, when he talks about that, when she talks about those people that are in danger outside and him rescuing them, it's like she immediately, in that statement, the way he's presenting himself, sees his nobility. I think there's something to be said about someone or something that, no matter what they look like, can give you this sense that, wow, they demand respect. You know what I mean? Not like in a forceful sense. It's there's a presence. A presence is what he has, that he's able to take the initial visual and turn it into something else relatively quickly. We'll see that in Justice League Dark as well. It's great how these books have that kind of energy that kind of goes in between them. Frankenstein's very consistent in both, and I really love the flow between both books because of that. But in that sequence, I'm like sitting here, wow, he commands that. I would want him to respect me. And, it's funny how, like, a lot of times you want to be the running buddy over here or something like that, or you want to be their colleague or sidekick or something like that. I don't know that I feel that way with Frankenstein. I feel like, though, I would love for this guy to say, hey, you did good. I don't care what it was. It could have been eating a sandwich. Frank's always, hey, I've seen a lot of people eat sandwiches, but nobody eats one as good as you. I would feel good for the rest of the day just because Frankenstein said it. He's that kind of character. You want some kind of nod from him, like, good job, kid. Remember the Min Joe Green, yes. Pepsi commercial where he throws that? I want that kind of moment with Frankenstein.
Now, the question is, what would Frankenstein throw at you? Because, if he's going to take the sleeveless jacket, that's one thing. But he's worn this for a couple hundred years, so I don't see him parting with that. Mm-mm. But do you think he'd toss you a dead body or something like that? Hey, it's Arch, catch, thump, you get a body thrown at you.
Jim, it's probably going to be an ear or something. Is what I'm expecting. And I'm gonna, then I'm gonna be endlessly stuck with, what do I do with this? Like, what do you put it in so it doesn't rot? Where do you just
display case right there?
I'll want it on the mantle. It's never going to happen. My wife wouldn't go for that. So it's like, where do you put something like that then? Because it's definitely a conversation piece. Yeah. So I don't know. That's the endless question. What does Frankenstein give you for the wink and the nod? Because you're right. He's not giving up his coat because it's cool.
Yeah.
Even he makes the ripped up coat look cool.
Yes, he's retro, man. Yeah, because I know that's no longer hip and fashionable, but I think he can bring it back. He's brought it back.
It's funny how I want to know more about like Frankenstein's wife, because you see the Bride of Frankenstein being constructed in the basement after all this has happened, and what was done differently with her, because it's clear when we've seen her, she's decidedly different than him. That's one of the great things about concepts like this. There's an endless amount of fresh story to be told from this. There's more story here. I want to know more about these characters, more about... It's one of the reasons why I'm sad. I'm like, this is not going to be an ongoing monthly. But then there's an opportunity in a team book to tell more about this character, hopefully through his interaction with his teammates, because I think we've seen in books like Justice League Dark, they do a good job of telling origin stories, that with their Zero issue I thought was fabulous. So there's an opportunity then to go further with Frankenstein, and hopefully they will, in that book, if that's where he's ending up, which I'm guessing that this is definitely going to be his home after this. I'm hoping, though, that he's not an iVampire reoccurring character. I want to see him there monthly.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot for him, is Justice League Dark. But again, I'm in the same boat with you. They haven't officially announced that he is going to be a regular character. I want him to appear somewhere. I want him to be active. And I want him more than a guest appearance. I want a continuing story of Frank, and I am upset that we're losing the Frankenstein title. And this is definitely one of those titles that when it's going away, I'm like, oh, there's so much more they could have done with it. It's a little upsetting, but you got to sit and you got to enjoy what you have. And this is definitely a title that is a rereadability for me, and I think that's. That's a definite solid statement of what we got, in that I'm already thinking, I want more of this, but I'm also thinking, okay, I've got what I have, I'm going to reread again when everything's said and done, just because I enjoyed this so much.
That's one of the things I think I'm more and more as I'm getting older, and it's not an age thing. I don't know what's happening. I think just as a reader, my viewpoint is changing. When a series is getting canceled, obviously, there's the disappointment of losing the series, but I also count myself glad that they put out the series at all if it was something that I enjoyed. Because there's a lot of concepts, like Frankenstein, for example, that because it's not a Superman, because it's not a Batman, it's a risk. Any of these concepts that aren't, your big-name people that are universally well-known by everybody and their uncle, any comic company that puts these books out is taking a risk, trying a new concept. And I think comics should always be about experimentation. So I'm glad when they do series like this, because it's something that at the time I'm reading it, I'm thoroughly enjoying. Like you, I'm finding myself going back and rereading series that have been canceled. I'll give a great example. I enjoyed the most recent Vigilante series that was out a great deal. We talked about on the show quite a bit how much we enjoyed it. And I've recently gone back and started rereading some of those issues, just because I thought it was a cool series. It's something that's different. There's not something they're really doing like that right now, and I'm really digging it. Just rereading it again. And this is going to be one of those. I'm with you. It's in that ballpark where, because it's so different, I'm just going to reread it because it's a fun read. And I'm liking with the New 52. I have some confidence this is going to wrap up nicely. Wherever he winds up going, whatever they wind up doing with him, because they're doing that with all of these series. They're doing a wrap-up of each one. I think that's drastically important in comics, that you value the reader and recognize whether the series has had 4 issues or it's had, more than 14 issues. You need to give the reader a sense of closure and a sense that the character's going on somewhere. So your imagination can take you beyond where the series has ended. And I want that from this book in particular.
Yeah. Now, we talked a little bit on the art earlier, and I got to say, the sequences when he's in the Amazon, with the local indigenous tribe there, those were just some beautiful, beautiful artwork, especially some of those moments where we get this emotional reaction on Frank's face as he's interacting with, the tribesmen, as he's, dealing with the monster, the spirit, whatever that's in that tree. There is just some great, humanity moments of him where he's like, shock and awe, and just where he's getting his, again, it's development of his personality, development of his soul, just that part of him that is being created in these processes. And I just absolutely loved it, because I do like a Frankenstein where they keep a little bit of the shade over his face, and kind of you do get a little bit of that creature feature from him, but you get these pop moments where they really bring in the eyes, and especially the shock and kind of awe moments. I was like, wow, this is some really, really cool stuff going on.
Also, the relaxed brow. In the sequence you're talking about where he's painted in the tribal colors.
Yeah.
And, that mask that he's got on his face. And this sense of belonging that he's clearly starting to adopt. I think we as readers, everybody in their life has had a time, and hopefully it's shorter, where you've had a sense of not belonging and not being a part of something. A lot of times, I'll be honest, a lot of times, multiple times in my life, I've had a sense of not belonging. Not necessarily because of something that anybody else has done. I think we all hit that point. I grew up a very quirky person. So, I had lots of times where I went through my life like that. It's something about this character. When you see that, you get this sense of, wow, that's cool. He belongs to this group right now. And when I see them, Shade was going to intervene at this point, I'm like, no, you better not intervene at this point, because dude's happy. Then Victor Frankenstein, which it shows how evil and twisted Victor Frankenstein was, and with what he was doing. He knew what he was doing was wrong. He didn't care. What he cared about was his reputation. This creature, this beast, by doing what he did, destroyed his reputation. His thirst to go after him is because he destroyed the chance for him to be patted on the back for his greatness, that he knew more than everybody else, and that he was going to change everything in a way for everybody else, and show the world his true brilliance. And he'll never be acknowledged for it now, because Frankenstein has turned him into a monster. Never taking his own sense of accountability into this, saying, hey, I'm the one that did this. This was my boneheaded idea, grinding up souls to make a big green guy. There's something about that where, you can't help but root for Frankenstein. Like, when a harpoon goes through Frank, you want him to take it out and shove it through Victor. I mean, it's one of those, you're pretty clear, cut and dry. Frank's good guy, Victor very, very bad guy. On the surface, you could say that that's all this book is. But then when you get down to the real nobility and the sheer amount of character content that has been done with Frankenstein, this is one of the deeper books that I'm reading. And it's got all that cool, simplistic monster stuff. And I'm not please, when I say simplistic, a lot of times when you say that, it sounds like a negative. What I mean, a good monster story, you want good guy versus bad guy. And you want really clear, decisive lines. Like, I'm clear on this. Victor's a very bad man. And I want to see Victor get his. That's simple, and you want that, because you want to root for that. What I demand as a reader then from the great writers who are doing really cool things is, you got to give me some really cool content that makes this a deep experience unlike anything else. And Frankenstein has that. It works on multiple levels with multiple layers of storytelling that gives you that rich kind of heck yeah, high five moment story with a lot of really strong stuff that makes you think after the fact. It's got a complete package here. It's a really good book with artwork that you are mentioning that is, I agree, really, really well crafted. And the whole art team has a really good sense of what his world should look like as opposed to every other book in the DC universe. This is something out of the New 52 I've been really liking. I like that books have a thematic art style that matches that title. And I think we're seeing a lot of artistic creativity here from the people that are doing these books, that are making them look fresh, that are making them look unique. Even when a guest artist comes on a book, you will see them, embrace the theme of that title and keep something fresh. So, I don't know I'm guessing editorial has a certain say in who the guest artists are. I don't know if the regular creative team, has a say in who a possible fill-in person would be or how that works. They're doing a really great job of that, though, in the New 52. It's something that I'm really digging in my favorite titles that nothing is coming to the top of my head of a jarring experience where art has been so drastically different in tone. You can tell it's a different artist, but in tone. And that's something that's really important to me, that I'm not taken out of the tone that's being presented.
Oh, God, yeah. And one of the I do enjoy when we get these art panels where there's very little dialogue, there's just the action sequence going on.
Yes.
And, pictures telling the story is, absolutely wonderful, which Yeah, in the beginning, with 6+ years ago when we first started this, those are the kind of panels where, oh, those are okay, and I didn't really delve too deep into it. I was more of, the story, what was being said, the dialogue, and I was more of that focus, not just sitting back and looking and enjoying the artwork. That's something that over the years of doing the show that I've gotten more into and I've gotten more to enjoy. And it's part of the reason I do my second read is always a pure art read, where I'm just looking at the pictures, I'm just looking at the artwork, I'm not reading anything, I'm just going through the book and just enjoying the artwork. And this is one of those titles that I really enjoyed doing that. And this is not just the Zero issue. It's been from the beginning to, through, 14 so far. I'm really enjoying the visual treats that I'm getting from this title. It's another one of those great combination, great team ups of the writer and art, the full creative force behind the book is on the same page. And I love seeing that, and I enjoy those titles. Those are the ones that really just, it resonates with me. And these are, names that are, filed in the memory and whatnot. And, I'll remember when I see them. Well, I've seen a couple of stuff from Wayne Faucher before, and I remember that name. I don't remember Matt Kint or Alberto Ponticelli, but they're now in the memory books. They're right there now. When I see those names, I will start, let me see, what's this? What's this working on now? Just because I've had these moments where I was like, this is a really cool team-up.
Does that lead you to seek out material from them? Like to see, for example, Matt Kint, let's go with him as the writer. Do you now say to yourself, when this series is over, I'm going to either follow Matt Kint where he goes next, or try to seek out, what other work has he done? Where can I get more Matt Kint writing? Because I've become a fan of his style of storytelling. Do you do that?
I will I will do that with writers, and then with art teams, I'll use it as a deciding factor. Like if I'm thinking about getting a book and I see that it's got Alberto Ponticelli on there, I will probably pick it up just because I've enjoyed the work. Yeah. But I will pursue and throw in names of writers just because if it's a story, if they're laying out a format that I enjoy, I'll throw it out there and see what they got. See whether it's past work or whether it's future work coming up. But I do that, but it all depends on where they're going and what I have in my budget left over.
I tend to do that too. Like, if I've got that extra spot for an extra slot for a book or two, I will tend to look for artists that I enjoyed on a previous series, or writers, as you're mentioning, both, and to try and fit some of their work into there because I feel like I need that fix. That's something that I did back when I first started discovering writers. Writers first, and then artists. You know what? I'm going to take that back. It was pretty much so even back then. Because I remember things with the Claremont and Byrne X-Men. I would read anything Claremont was doing. If he did a miniseries or something else, or books. He did First Flight, I believe was the name of the book that he did. And then it was a series of 3 books. They were novels. They weren't comics. And he did 3 of them, and they were sequels to each other. I really enjoyed them. I was in a Chris Claremont mode then. But then John Byrne, anything he was doing, I was following as well because I really enjoyed his X-Men art. So it was pretty much so dead even then of people that, if I saw their name attached to something and I had the money in my budget, I would do that. Or I'd go to the library. In the case of Chris Claremont's books, I was grabbing them from the library because I didn't have, I was a kid. I didn't have a major budget to speak of. But they were people that I would seek out because of the attachment. And that's something that's still true today. If you can hit me emotionally like they're hitting me with this book. You're talking about the art sequence. I want to echo what you're saying here. That sequence where he's pulled up with that harpoon. And, Victor's standing there watching over. You got this big beastly-looking guy. It's clear that Victor had something to do with this guy's enhancements with the harpoon because the whole point was to seek out Frankenstein. We had already become emotionally attached to Frankenstein belonging to this village now in a very short period of time. How cool is it that Frankenstein, you see him trying to work that harpoon out of himself with one hand, pulling that guy close to punch him with the other hand. I'm still not entirely sure if Frankenstein pulled the harpoon out himself or it was the sheer force of his punch that did it. Because one way or another, dude's left with a gaping hole in his stomach.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really great. Because I'm sitting here in this moment like, and here's the thing, I don't need that defined for me. Because I'm pretty convinced anybody watching that sequence of events, if it was live action, would be questioning the same thing. Because it probably happened so quickly and so brutally. Because this is a beast that was peaceful and calm and noble, happy to be a part of this tribe, that's a layer of Frankenstein you don't often get to see. This is the guy that's kissing a girl's hand and calling her milady. I mean, I get that. There's a nobility to him. I like that about him. It's something that makes him just a little bit different. That's the tragedy of these monsters a lot of times when you see them, and if done right, you can rally behind them. And I just really, I'm with you. That whole visual sequence, not a word spoken, but so much said. I think that's hard, to take a comic page where there's no dialogue and to make it speak volumes.
Well, and a lot of the dialogue and the inner thought, and when I'm seeing those, is going through my head. So I see the one page and one panel of Frank's, just rage. And I'm not just seeing that. I'm hearing the dun 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 dun, kind of music building, knowing, okay, someone's about to get their butt kicked right now. Frank's about to open up a can, and I can hear the background music. I can see the buildup. I can, feel the energy of, just waiting for him to throw the guy like a quarter mile. And he knocks the one dude, one punch sends him flying. Takes the other dude, crushes, punches, and shatters his head. You're seeing just the power. And you're seeing the fury, and it's just like I'm right there with him going, yeah, all right.
The great thing about this Zero issue is it takes us on this horrid journey in the beginning where you really don't like Victor Frankenstein right from the beginning. There's nothing appealing about Victor Frankenstein. It's not like we were swerved or anything. We knew this was a horrid man. And by the end of it, when Frank's having his final battle with Victor, we want to see that. And I love how simplistic it is. It isn't about Frank winning Victor over to his philosophy. He doesn't feel like he's going to change this guy. It's really cut and dry. Because sometimes you get that pleading with the villain, trying to find that good part of the villain's soul and that type of thing because, there's that gray area, which I like all that stuff. Don't get me wrong. I dig that. But sometimes it's refreshing to just see bad guy get smashed with rock.
Amen. Amen.
I really liked that. It's just I say, shut up, boom. Because Victor was the one that was pontificating over there. He's going on and on about, what are you? I created you, you beast. You are an abomination, all that kind of stuff. It's like, shut up. Bam. I'm like, you know what? Yay, Frank. Because that's part of escapism, where you're sitting here like, you know what? There's nothing redeemable about Victor. And I think in life, we see it on television all the time, and I'm talking about where it's real horrid people who have done these horrible things, and you'll ask the question, why are we having this person in prison for life? Why are we paying tax dollars to do that? And then why does it cost so much to go the other route? And there's all kinds of morality getting and all that, and I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on that because I weigh all different sides on that as well, so it's not cut and dry. But sometimes it's nice to see Bad Man ended.
Yes.
But then even Father Time comes back and says, and this is something, it's foreboding to the future. We see a very different version of Father Time. It's the same Father Time. Very different version of Father Time show up and say you should have ripped his head off because Arch Nemesis is well come back, which is something we know to be true in comics. And there's something uniquely comic in this story to know that what Frank did not end Victor. We know Victor's going to come back because some way these evil, horrible things end up coming back. Victor comes back. Ripping Victor's head off I don't think would have helped here because of how Victor comes back later. But it was interesting that Father Time noted that. And we get to see a brief look at Frankenstein's career with shade leading up to present day. And I liked that. I liked the story. It was a nice little depth piece giving us some real content as to his actual background, what started him on this path. Because after Victor's done, what is Frank's motivation? Where would Frank go from here? The village he was a part of, he can no longer be a part of. So he's at a transition point where Father's intervention at this point, Father Time stops in at a point where Frankenstein does not have a direction and he takes advantage of it. Father Time is one of those characters. I don't know that you can say he's a good guy or a bad guy or anything like that. I think he's a leader of this organization. I don't know that I feel that he's always pure in his motivations. I like that about the character of Father Time because he's very... I don't think he's a bad guy, so let me clarify that. I think SHADE is a good organization. But I don't know that I think that Father Time's motivations are always pure. There's something about that. He makes Father Time an interesting character and also brings Frank to blows verbally and questioning his missions that he's going on because of the fact that I think his morality is very different than Father Time's, which makes him question his allegiances with SHADE a lot of times. And I like that. I find that interesting. That's an interesting part of this book.
Yeah, again, it's part of Frank's character. And if he didn't question Father Time, if he didn't question some of the stuff that he was doing, it would throw a monkey wrench in who Frank is. By his personality, he should be going, hey, what's going on here? This isn't right. He has that right wrong. He has that ethics and that morality. And some of the stuff that Father Time is doing is crossing the line or dancing on the line or just going right up and back and forth and bobbing and weaving. There's, Father Time's a shady character, and no pun intended with shade. But he is that, that questionable character that makes it makes him more fascinating for me that he's the quote-unquote more human of the two of them, and yet Frank has more humanity. Frank has more compassion. Frank does the right thing. If I had to pick between Father Time and Frank's opinion on what the right course of action is, I'm always going to go with Frank because Frank's got that moral point to it. But I'm never going to discount Father Time because, to be honest, he does... some of the stuff that he's like, hey, you gotta, break your hands a little bit, You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. Well, depending on what he considers a few and what he considers to be the eggs, what's appropriate. That's where you got that questionable. So these two together make a really neat story.
We look at issue number 13. I'm going to admit my own boneheadedness on this one. I started reading issue number 13. I think I was so focused on where Frank was at that I wasn't really realizing what was happening with SHADE.
Yeah.
Like in our world, that like SHADE would be going through everything we're seeing on Animal Man and Swamp Thing. I don't know why, because to be quite frank with you, they couldn't make it more clear when you look at the cover and it says Rot World Secrets of the Dead. So, it's clear that like this is a part of the whole thing. So I should have been thinking that way. But I was really focused on Frank and everything he was going through with Nina and, the budding romance that was going on there with the two of them, which I really like because I've liked her as a character all along. I never saw it leading to a romance between the two of them, yet it makes perfect sense. As she got to know him, there would be something there. As he got to know her and her sense of she's put herself at risk many times and she's not a combatant like he is. And there's something about that relationship and how we've been, journeying with them that I've really, really liked. I was not paying attention to the fact that when Father Time's pleading with him right in the beginning of the issue, it's because the world's ending. The stuff that we've been seeing in Animal Man and Swamp Thing is happening there. When I read it through the first time, by the end of it, I figured out, I'm like, oh, I'm a dunce. So I went back through and I reread the issue. It reads very differently for me when I'm not being a bonehead, and I knew what was going on there. I'm like, oh my gosh, like Father Time is blatantly saying, Frank, please, how many times have you heard me say please? This is Father Time doing this. None of that was about manipulation. This was desperation. Yeah. What a great theme and tone, and it's great that you can read this book, I think, on multiple different levels if you're following Frank's side of things and then following the SHADE side of things along the way. It's a really cool, well-developed issue with two very different things happening that I thought were really interesting.
Oh, God, yeah. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of saw I saw Father Time, something was going on, but it did take me a moment to realize, oh, yeah, it's the outside world attack. I thought something had snuck into SHADE and was attacking SHADE and all that. Because you could see that very clearly. The one panel, everything's good. Then the next panel, everything's almost destroyed. You're like, ooh, that's something big's going on there. But it wasn't until like the end that I realized, oh yeah, they're going to be the rest of the world's being attacked, so they're also being attacked. So yeah, there was a little bit of a numbskull moment for me as well.
One of the things that I like about Frank is, Frank sits there and looks at groups of people. He looks at them going through turmoil and has to say to himself, am I following Shade's orders or am I following my own morality here? And those kind of moral trade-offs, and when I say moral trade-offs, I think in any situation where you're faced with Shade's being attacked, these people are being attacked, I'm here now. My feeling is that Frank will always try to, he'll try to finish this mission and then try to help Shade. He will try to do both. It's not about letting somebody go or leaving somebody out of it, but it is more of he doesn't feel like I've got to put Shade first when I'm right in the middle of a moral atrocity.
Yeah.
And there is that part of him that as an agent says, I've got to do what Shade wants me to do and all that, and we've seen that side of him. But when it gets down to him really realizing what's happening, when he can no longer divorce himself from it, we see him just step up to the plate and be that guy that I think we all hope we could be. I want to be able to have that moral side of me where, I can realize that I'm going to turn my back on the people that I know maybe because I believe strongly enough in something that is right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not in the sense that you're divorcing yourself from friends or anything like that, but being able to sit there and say, look, I respect you, but this is the right thing to do, and I need to do that. I think it's what makes you an individual versus just a drone going through the motions, is when you can have honest and open discussions, a moral code that people can learn to respect. And I feel like it's something we should all strive for as a people. I think it's something that continues to develop in you your entire life. You hope by the time we're all done that we've at some point in time reached that sense of enlightenment where that moral code, is something where it can be defined by others when they look at you. But it's stories like this that I think make you a better person, following this. Because I'm reading this, I'm going, gosh, I hope I could be that guy at some point. I don't know that I'm there. I don't, because I haven't been faced with those kind of situations. But, geez, I hope I could be the kind of guy that in a moral situation could, in the face of everything that I know, say, this is the right thing to do. Because you hear so many times stories on the news about people who didn't. They just went along with things and they kept their mouth shut. You know what I mean?
Oh, God, yeah.
Frank's one of those guys that would not, and I think today in today's current media, we see that so much, and I think that's why I'm connecting with this. I'm like, Frank's one of those guys that would be outraged. He would not stay quiet. He would not just go along with everybody because he doesn't want to rock the boat. Frank would rock the boat, not just to rock the boat, because there's people that go that other route too, and they rock the boat just to get noticed. Frank would rock the boat because he's morally outraged at what happened. And there's something contemporary about this storyline to have a character like this who doesn't have compromises. That's not to say that Frank's perfect. He's not. But he certainly, when it comes to morality, when he sees something he feels wrong, he does something about it. And even if it's as simple as bashing it with a rock. But then you can see why people would follow him. Because you got to figure they're following a guy that's sewn together. And, why would you do that? Because there's something, he builds confidence in you. And like you said, you believe that he would be there for you. You said that earlier, and I was echoing that with you. And you, to me, I go back to what I said earlier, you want his approval. You want him to say you did the right thing. And I don't know what it is about this character that does that. The word nobility, I keep going to it. There's something about that I think is unique. And that's fun with comics. Because I do think comics, when writers hit certain things right, can make you strive to be a better person. And I think this is one of those stories for that. Because I think in contemporary media, if we just watch the television and news nowadays with all the nonsense going on, it would be great to have a Frankenstein channel where he just weighs in on everything.
Oh, God, I would love the Frankenstein podcast. I'd listen to it.
Where it's just random things currently going on. I'd watch it every day.
Yeah.
You would watch the news on every other channel, then you'd get to Frank's take on it. And I really firmly feel that by the time I'm done, Frank would really make me understand everything. He might be Frank should be in Congress.
Oh, God.
And that's just for everybody listening. That's not a party statement. That's not me saying, anti-Republican, anti-Democrat. I'm saying in general, you put a guy like that in the center thing and say, Frank is going to negotiate. We wouldn't be in the place place we're in right now.
I'm thinking if we put Frank there, we'd have a balanced budget. Yeah, I can't see him just sitting back there. Definitely no fence riding from him. He'd give you a yes or no, right or wrong, and it'd be kind of interesting to see him take a rock to a couple of the people's heads.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be a great thing. So that's what I'm saying. Let's take parties out of this because I'm sure people listen to this. Some people are Republicans, some people are Democrats, some people in the middle. I can respect all of that. I'm not trying to bash any side on this one, but we all know
bash it all.
yeah. No, we'll let Frank do that. But I mean, how great would it be to have a guy like that in there? And I think he's one of those guys that nowadays our frustrations about the world in general right now. I think Frank is a very contemporary hero because of that, because he's very cut and dry. They're classic. It's a place that I don't know that anybody can go to now, but it would be nice to have somebody like him. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I love when he pulls out that giant sword because I was a big Conan fan growing up. Still am. I love Conan. But there's something about when Frank pulls that out. Like that sword looks like it's going to just cut through. It's as sharp as can be. The speed and force that Frank's throwing it with, there's very little that can't cut through. And when you finally see him standing up against all that rot, but then not only all that rot, Victor kind of going back and showing, I love that we see this guy waterlogged on the shore, being pulled into the ground where the rot ends up bringing him back up. And you see like that balance there. You see the green and the red surrounding him. That's a great example of where coloring really helps us use this book to understand the relationship of the rot to the green and the red and how it is that middle balance part between them. And if any pieces, parts of this whole thing, the green's gone, the red's gone, the rot's gone, it's going to cause an imbalance that's going to ruin all of them in some way. That's what's happening to our world in this storyline here. And I really loved, again, you talked about the art team, just that whole sequence with Victor, I think really connected me to things that were going on in Swamp Thing and Animal Man. And that was where I started to realize this was the sequence where I'm like, wait a minute, I'm an idiot. The shade thing's associated with all that. Because I was with you. I thought they were being attacked at first, but it was really this sequence where I'm like, wait, I'm a dunce.
Oh, okay. Yeah, especially you see Arcane in the one sequence after he's resurrected. Like, oh, okay, there we go. That's what's going on here.
Right.
Yeah, and I like the fact when Victor first showed up, there was normal people around Frank, and then we see them transform, then get possessed by the rot. But Frank's team's able to fight it off because of what and who they are. So I thought that was another cool moment of the, transformation.
I love in monster stories giant beasts, and like things that you think that, no creature should be able to control. Frank's able to because he's Frank.
Yeah.
And you just know, like, I'm never going to be that, nor do I want to be that. But I want to, like, see that. Like, I want to see this thing bursting out of the water. I would love to be there and go, wow. I was there when that happened, and I got very wet. That sequence where that came, I really felt that moment. That was a great art moment. Could you see how tiny Frank is on top of that thing with his sword? Because they had to zoom in for us to see Frank. Because in the first sequence when he comes out, I'm convinced there's a speck up there that was supposed to be Frank. And I don't know where it is, and that's not a negative on the art. I love that it took another panel zooming in where we see a tiny Frank up there with the sword in there. And then zooming in either further to actually see Frank using his sword to drive this beast. And I'm sitting there like, if I'm this beast, I'm going to be a little annoyed that this guy's sticking his sword in me. But then it's Frankenstein. You got to kind of go, all right, I guess it's okay. Like, you got to question what the beast is thinking. I'm just going to do it because this little tiny man's shoving a sword in my head.
See, I looked at that picture, and I think I see Frank.
Where?
Okay, I'm going to try to describe. You got the. Okay.
Is he are you saying he's below the cloud in between those those two horns there?
Yes,
that's what I was thinking he was too.
I think that's because then when you look at the zoom in close up and you compare the two panels, so they actually did draw him in there.
Yeah,
I think that's Frank.
Well, that's why I said it wasn't a knock on the art. I love that you had to zoom in for us to really clearly see that it's him. We're really saying the same thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because it really wasn't a negative on the art. I wasn't saying the art did something wrong. What I was saying was, for me, giant beasts, I loved Godzilla movies and stuff like that. You want to develop a sense of scale. And to me, a sense of scale is developed when we can't even see the main character until we zoom in. And that was really the point I was trying to make. So if it came off in any way, I'm glad you clarified that, because I don't want it to come off in any way that I'm saying anything negative about the art. It's just the opposite. I loved the zoom effect was needed here for us to even see Frank. Because the first shot we do see of Frank in the zoom effect is still Frank at a distance. Still at an insane distance. We had to go another page to even see, a clear Frank.
Yeah.
I thought that was great, giving a sense of just how big this creature is that Frank's controlling. And his sword has got to be, sticking in the creature, incredibly tiny. It's almost like being hit by an ant or a paper cut, which it makes me wonder, though, is Frank hurting this creature more than, Frank was huge stabbing him? Because I don't know about you. I've had big gashes and stuff before, and they hurt, but nothing hurts me worse than, a bee sting or a paper cut.
Yeah.
So I'm questioning why this creature would even do what Frank wants. But
he's doing it because it's Frankenstein.
Right.
Come on.
But I really love that when you see all the people crawling out of the creature and how this is almost like a base of operations. And Frank has done this impossible thing of saving all of these beasts and creatures only to be pulled into this war between the green, the red, and the rot. Basically, the green and the red have lost. These are the last holdouts who are trying to bring Frank in and saying, look, we need you. You are a potential secret weapon to putting an end to all this, because you are the one that the rot can't beat. The rot can't take down. And maybe there's more to you than we know. I feel from this story we're going to learn something new about Frank that we did not know before. I think Frank's going to learn something about himself that he did not know before. And there's an anticipation that's being built because of that. That's very different than what's going on in Swamp Thing and Animal Man. And that's what I mean is, and what's great about that is, you've got 3 different books that are heavily affected by this storyline. Each one of them is presenting a unique viewpoint into this event. We said this before. This is how you do a crossover. Oh, I'm very focused on Frank in these issues. I know that it's mirroring what's going on in those other 2 books, but I'm getting a great Frankenstein story here. And I feel it's added a sense of scope and scale to Rot World that is really, really impressive. And usually reserved for books with Superman and Batman, or Green Lantern, or a company-wide crossover.
Yeah.
You never focus on these type of characters with this. This is something they need to look at more. Because I think for people that are reading your little offbeat books, the ones that you don't normally know as your top tier books, this is a great way to get people talking about those books and saying, hey, you should be reading them. This is a crossover that I'm hoping for anybody that missed this pulls them into Swamp Thing, pulls them into Animal Man, pulls them into the world of Justice League Dark, even though Justice League Dark isn't a part of this. I mean, it's in this world. And Frankenstein. And has them give one of those books a shot, because you don't need to be reading all of them. The event was handled in such a way where you don't. I'm curious to see how the culmination is going to play out, but I have a funny feeling that you can probably, maybe by picking up 1 or 2 issues of the other books, maybe you'd have to redo that for the culmination. Yet I don't see anything that's indicating that yet, because I have a funny feeling it's going to be pretty clear in Animal Man how the story ends. You don't need to read Swamp Thing to do that, and vice versa. So I really hope that people might give some of these books a shot, because I'm pleasantly surprised as to how important these books are to my reading stack each month, because of the fact they're so different than anything I've ever read before.
Oh, God, yeah. This has been, and it's funny, as you're talking, I'm sitting there just nodding my head, going, yes, yes, yes. Completely agree with you on the crossover. And I'm actually very curious, and excited to see how they handle the ending. Because you mentioned it where, so far this story's been laid out wonderfully that I don't need to pick up the other stories. If I was just reading Frankenstein, I'm getting a full story. I'm curious as to how this is going to end, how the story's going to end in Swamp Thing or Animal Man. Will there be a need where you have to pick up, or can you continue from beginning to end just your title. You get a story from beginning, middle, and end. How is this going to lay out? And that's kind of an excitement and an anticipation on my part that I'm waiting to see where this plays out. And especially you get them, we're seeing Frank all over the world. They get out of the big Leviathan type creature, and the Condors pick them up and drop them off in Metropolis. And now we're in Metropolis going, okay, what's going on here? Where are any of the supers? Where are Superman, Supergirl, and whatnot? What's going on here? Why do we have this infestation? And I love Frank's confusion fits in the fact that he still doesn't have any information as to what's going on, where this is coming from, what is the potential invasion. And we have to get the knowledge inside Frank, but we're getting the knowledge within a cool story of him fighting off these creatures as Frank can. It's watching heads explode and Frank crushing and just doing a Frank thing, but it's not just mindless killing and destruction. He is trying to figure out what's going on.
Can we talk about that dialogue, though? It goes, it appears things are much as Victor described, but why here? Why now? The red is not telling me something. Frankenstein cannot die. Frankenstein suffers not the pestilence of fools, not the pestilence or fools, and Frankenstein does not rot, as he's ripping apart rot creatures. And there was something about that moment, for what purpose was I brought here? Where are the city's protectors? Certainly I am not all that is left. Herm. The dragon's like, Herm. But, the funny part is, that's added weight to when he does that. That's him contemplating. He's thinking, like, Herm now means like 10 billion different things. Like, before it would just be kind of like, well, Frankenstein really has nothing to say. No, that means something's going on in dude's head that's really deep, which is totally, I think we're in a different place with what he's doing when he just goes, Herm. I think when Frankenstein's quiet, he's probably thinking more than anybody does when they're blabbing. It adds an intelligence to that character. So there's something about all this, and his relationship with these, and his lack of patience with these emissaries of the Red. We see this a lot of times. I love fantasy literature. We see this a lot of times in fantasy literature where people are sent on quests, and they're not really given all of the information. They're given little tidbits that are frustrating. Like, you want to know why. Why am I the one that has to get the ring and carry it over here? Well, why is it just me? And you learn those answers along the way. And you learn something about yourself along the way in those fantasy quests. But it's never laid out for you in the beginning. Like, they don't give you the full novel approach, this is the manual of your quest, which you really should have. In Frankenstein's case, that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing him go on this quest. He's being given little tidbits from the Red. And it's this, relationship of, should I trust the Red, should I not? What I'm seeing visually shows me that something is going on that I have to do something about. The world's been destroyed. Why? Or I don't think he's come to that realization that it's the whole world yet, but he's pretty convinced that something horrible has gone on because of its Metropolis. Yeah. Where is Superman? And he hints at that. Where are these superheroes here? I love that. I love that because it puts us in the place we've been in the other books. And keeping in mind that depending on what order you're reading the books in or whether or not you're reading all of them, this would be your first establishment that this has happened. Yeah, and,
with him running into Mr. Ed, that was, again, I like the fact that he's like another emissary of the
Red. Sorry.
Hey, a horse is a horse, of course. No, and then as they're moving on, it's, again, fighting through, and they run into the vampire dude. And, again, I was like, this is, I was glad to see him in there, but I have to fully admit that I was questioning whether he's an agent of the Rot, whether he was still a good guy or not.
Oh, Velcoro, yeah.
He was always a character that has you going, is he on Frank's side or is he anti-Frank? What's going on here? And that was something throughout 13 and 14 I always had in the back of my head. Is he going to try to double-cross Frank? And, again, I kind of like the fact that I had that mystery, that we don't really know where everything's playing out, who's on what side.
Here's my take on him and Frank's frustration with him and his frustration with Frank. He looks at Frank as this guy, this black and white guy who always wants to do the right thing, the good thing. He's a little bit more gray area in the sense that he's content to be lazy And he's been thrust into this because of circumstance. You know, he shares his story about, yeah, I drained the blood too much, and this is why I was put into this, you know, because, you know, this is like my penance and, you know, like my prison sentence and all that stuff. So you really get this idea that this is a guy who is not there because sign me up, enlist me. It just happened to be because I was a vampire that Shade kind of put me into this and has been grooming me in this situation. So it's everything you're saying is true. There's a reluctance about him. I think what happens is when he sees Frank, he's sitting here saying, okay, Shade sent me out looking for you. Now I'm realizing, you know, and we didn't know this yet. He's so glad to see Frank because Shade is no more.
Yeah.
When you read it again and look over that issue and realize why, with everything he's saying, he's exactly the guy he's presenting himself to be, why he would be so glad to see Frank, why he would be glad to buddy up with him. I think we're seeing a buddy relationship between him and Frank in the way that they combat together that we don't see from him in any of the previous issues because he knows just how desperate things are. If Frank doesn't do this, he's dead too. Mm-hmm. Like, he knows if the rot takes over, he's done for. And what is there for him to snack on if the rot takes over?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. But it was in all that.
And wait, I'm not disputing you. I'm agreeing with you. But I think I'm going off as a guy who's read it through again and seeing where he's at and why he's motivated the way he is. I agree with you. He's not a character that I would normally say, we're taking him into the circle of trust.
Right. Oh, no. Yeah. Yeah. We're looking at him the same way. And I think that's, you know, I think that was part of my enjoyment of this playing out, seeing that, you know, he never portrayed Frank. He was actually fighting for the good guy's side, but he's a character that could have very easily gone the other way, and that makes him interesting, and that makes it fascinating, and that makes, again, you need to have, I think, you know, when you have a character like Frank, who's got the right is right, and I will do the right thing, you need to have that morally obscure kind of character. You know, immediately first thought that pops in my head is I really want to see Frank and Constantine together, just because those two characters really would be that great, you know, yin and yang balance of right is right. Come on, sometimes you got to do the wrong thing to do right. Sometimes you got to do the wrong thing for better yourself. You know, you got that Constantine style and swerve and swagger. Him and Frank, I think, would be a great title. Just like these two, you know, together when they're traveling. It's, again, you need to have that balance. I love Frank as a character, but I do love seeing his interactions with these other morally obscure characters, you know, because of his high moral code.
With Constantine, usually he's involved in things not because he's trying to do right or wrong, because he's trying to accomplish something or learn about something or discover something. So you enter into that area where you've got somebody who's moral and their reasons are they're entering into something to do something better for humanity. And when the person you're with so blatantly disregards that because their focus is elsewhere, that would infuriate.
Yeah.
And that's where those two, I like seeing what we've seen from them in Justice League Dark so far, because right from the beginning, when Frankenstein is introduced to him, you see that relationship right away, that Frank does not look at Constantine in a positive way. He doesn't hate him, but he's also not looking at him as a comrade, like old friend, I think his interaction with Swamp Thing, I'm assuming post this, because I don't know I don't know if they have a relationship here. I'm guessing they don't. I know he wouldn't with this Swamp Thing. I guess what I'm saying is, does Frank have a relationship with any of the Green in his lifetime? Because we're looking at Frank, who's been around a long time, so I don't know. He knows about the Red, so what does he know about the Green? I guess is where I'm kind of putting a question mark there. So will he have an immediate respect for Swamp Thing, or will he mistrust Swamp Thing because he's had no direct interaction, other than he knows about the Green? I'm curious to see that team up, to see if that looks differently, and if they build a camaraderie during that team up. Because it's clear Frank will, right away, pick up on people to be respected. Amethyst was a great example of that. He respected her right away, and got the idea that this is somebody who doesn't like to kill, but has a skill set that would be incredibly useful to what they're doing. And he encourages her just to do her best, and feeling that her best will be an asset to what they're doing. that's a very different reaction than what he had to Constantine initially. It's a very different reaction that I think he's going to have when he meets Swamp Thing or Animal Man in this. I think there's going to be a unique reaction to every person Frankenstein meets based on who they are, and Frank's weighing them by, analyzing who their potential in a situation. I want to see him with Animal Man's daughter.
Oh, God, yeah. And again, it's him, and I think part of the thing with Amethyst is the fact that he recognizes she is a little girl. She is still young, and yeah, she's got this skill set. Yeah, she's, is a warrior, but there is still that youth. There is still that innocence. When he sees the daughter and he deals with the daughter, that is going to be a whole nother story, a whole nother mindset, just because the daughter really is a little girl. There is no, worldly experience. She's this little kid who's thrust in this amazing stuff that shouldn't be there. And that's another. I'm so looking forward to that meetup and just the Frankenstein and the Animal Man family, just seeing how he deals with them.
Did you read yet? I know this week, I'm almost positive this week, was both Animal Man and Swamp Thing. I deliberately didn't read them, because I didn't want to, in this discussion, go there if there was any Frankenstein bits in there. Feeling that, for our listeners who are just Frankenstein readers or maybe get their books at a different time, they knew our discussion was going to be on Frankenstein and Justice League Dark. So I made sure I was current on both of those books. I deliberately did not read the next issue of Animal Man and Swamp Thing, both of which I believe came out this week. Did you read those yet?
They're sitting right now on my desk. Mm-hmm. As soon as we're done recording, I'm picking those things up and reading them.
I am too.
We are on the exact same page. I didn't do it for the exact same reasons.
They were both in this week, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I deliberately avoided them, expecting that this discussion I wouldn't be able to bite my tongue if I'd read them. So and I am with you. They will be read today because I'm excited about them. It was very hard not to do that. I didn't even look. Because I'm like, you know what? I'm going to focus on rereading for this episode, and then I'm going to really delve into this. So I haven't read anything from this week yet. I did a reread of all of this material, figuring that let's record today. Let me really embrace that, and then when I'm done with this recording, I'm going to start reading those books and really delving into them. Because I didn't want to read something that was going to influence this discussion that I shouldn't be reading. I liked at the end of that issue 13, because we're going to jump into issue 14, but I liked at the end of issue 13 that we got to see the shade net, the ball, sitting there in the middle of the street, very foreboding that, it was destroyed. There's this sense of, it goes back to what we said with both Animal Man and Swamp Thing. All three books have put us into that place of, man, they really did destroy the world.
Yeah, how are they going to fix the world? What are they going to do with all of this? That's the thing that just keeps running through my head. Where is this? How is this going to happen? They just destroyed the New 52. They rebooted it a year ago, and now it's all destroyed. What's going to happen?
Now, here's the question with Velcoro. I always question, he'll say things, if my wings worked, I'd be out of here. I don't know that I believe that. He's interesting, because I think that he's another one that's being influenced by Frankenstein. The more he's working with him, the more he's walking with him. I think there is that part of him that is very hard to deal with. He's that guy you just want to say shut up, like Frankenstein does. It's funny how Frankenstein just gets this blunt frustration, and he'll say things that I'm not a big one to say that to people, but Frank will. Frank, just isn't afraid to lay it all out there on you. And I really liked how when he was saying those things, as the stories progressed, agreeing with everything you said earlier about Velcoro, I don't know at this point that I agree with him that he says if my wings worked, I'd fly away. With him being with Frank right now, I don't know that he would do that. I think he would still stick with Frank.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think he'd still stick with Frank, but I think he'd be flying, or maybe he would fly ahead, or he would do something. We see later on in this issue that we see the character. We see the persona. What is this outward appearance that he's giving off? That he's just this, vampire, and he's just around for the ride. That's kind of thrown out the window. He goes down swinging. He goes down fighting, and you see him step up where he's just unloading everything he has to buy Frank time, to help Frank out, to get Frank, a chance to beat this thing.
Plus, he's also afraid.
I love seeing that.
He's also afraid Frank's going to rip his wings off.
Well, that too. Yeah, there's definitely that fear as well.
That first page where he's sitting here, it was so great. So, what's up with the no sleeves thing, Frankie? I know you mentioned this earlier. I ripped them off along with the previous owner's arms. The look on his face of but I do think you're right. He goes down swinging. I love the way that all played out because we got to see a heroic moment from Velcoro because that was truly heroic. He kept on fighting. He kept on being in the middle of these huge beastly situations. He also kept, I thought, a humor into all this because every time he kept rambling on about his stories, it was a different story. Like, I was ready to smack him upside the head by then, and I thought it was great that the writer was able to create that mood. I felt like Velcoro has a lot of personality, and I feel like I really know the character. I feel like I know a lot of people like Velcoro. I feel at times I'm Velcoro. So it's...
Oh, cool. That makes me Frank. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. No, I wasn't implying that. I think,
all right. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I look at you as the guy that got his arms ripped off.
Well, at least I'm not the fish lady. That's okay.
No.
Yeah, she's too smart for me.
Yeah. Although I think out of this book, she's a pretty noble character. Frank would respect you a lot if you were her.
Yeah, true. But
I did like when Velcoro found that technology and recognized, like, hey, this is the technology that's used to, like, regenerate body parts for you. I can use this for my wings. And if I kick it up to 11, it's going to heal me really fast. And, again, he wasn't talking about using it to escape. I think he was, strategically saying, hey, let's get me back to normal.
Well, let's get him back in the air.
Yeah.
That is a huge thing with him. I think that's part of it's that freedom of flight. He wants to have that. That's part of what he does. He's not the ground and pound fighter. When we see the bison charging, Frank just sees these monster bison coming at him. Okay, pull out the sword and smash it. Whereas he's got to go for cover. He's got to, and he's not the fighter. He's not the person who could throw down with this massive, beast. He's got to be able to use the stick and move, aerial assault. This is his personality. So without those wings, he loses a vital part of his arsenal. And I like the fact that he is thinking that. And I agree with you. He wasn't thinking of, I'm going to use this and get the heck out of here. He's thinking, okay, this is what I need to do for me. This is my style. This is my combat.
I like this many long weeks later sequence because it adds that whole quest concept. It adds a fantasy element to the story that I really like, where you've got these two, this hero and his buddy, like, for lack of a better term. It reminds me of my favorite Westerns. It reminds me of fantasy films. It reminds me of Conan-related stuff, where, you've got this sense of they've traveled over a long period of time. It also made me realize that much of this is happening before Animal Man and Swamp Thing have returned. So we're seeing a view of what the Earth was like with two characters who are traveling through it at a time when the entities of the red and the green are still off the playing field. And I like that. I don't know, it's just it kind of gives us another picture of the world that we haven't seen before, and adds a lot of validity as to another reason why Frank is really important to have in this story, because it added a sense of scale to me to this whole thing. I love its plan. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say just the backgrounds. You see the rot taking over. You see the green being destroyed. You see parts of the plant community, but the plants, that they're traveling through are starting to decay and rot away. And I loved seeing that part of it. Again, it's the background, the background sequences as they're doing their long ride. And within that, you get the funny moments of, hey, I like Franklin, I talk, you harm. It's the best of both worlds. And I was just little cracky moments like that. Just, I chuckled. But as you're going on and you're seeing the destruction of the world, this again, really fun moments, really cool story being advanced, but these awesome art sequences in the backgrounds.
And I love the use of humor because I think that's something that in my favorite fantasy literature does show up. When you've got those characters that are trying to get through great tragedy through humor. I'm somebody that, on my worst day, I try to find something to laugh at because I think it reinvigorates you, motivates you to keep pressing on and that type of thing. And I learned that from great stories like this. You know what I mean? You try to find that little chuckle moment. You try to, laugh at something ridiculous. You try to, my students, they will say something the way that only kids can, in the way that they look at the world, that will be humorous and true. because they're kids and they see things sometimes a lot clearer than we do. But it'll make me chuckle on a day that might be particularly stressful and rough. We all have them at our jobs, and in life, those days where something's weighing on you. And a lot of times it's something that you have no control over. That's just part of life. But you need those things that help get you through. And I think I tend to latch onto those moments because of literature like this that has shown me big quests where people will get through them because of humor and stuff like that. And it works. It really does. A lot of times it'll take that day that was really horrid and add a positive spin to it and make me happy that I was part of that day. This is the moment with the plan is exactly what we're talking about. So what's the plan? There's a mini egg in your pack. I suggest you use it while I distract him. And I love that there's the editor's note. It's the Monster Mobile from issue number 2, so we're bringing back something from the classic part of the series. Wait, what? That was a plan? I just loved that. I mean, I would read an ongoing monthly of just these two traveling around together writing wrongs.
Oh, God,
just to have this dialogue between them.
Oh, big time. Again, it's Frank and his supporting cast is, it does have some really cool moments. And this character is the one you have these little quirky, one-liner funny stuff with. If he was traveling with one of the other people, you wouldn't exactly have this. It would be it'd be personalized to whoever he's dealing with. And I love, again, his plan was he jumps off the top of the San Francisco Bridge right into the monster. There's really no complex plan of thought in Frank's thinking, but you can't. But I'm not going to say he's a simple monster smash. No, he knows this is how you got to take this thing down. This is it. There is no bob and weave. Look for the chink in his armor or thing. No, this is about smash and grab. And okay, you use the mini egg. I'll distract him so the thing doesn't realize what exactly that he's about to die.
I liked that bit where it's Frankenstein's about distraction, but his plan was sound.
Yeah.
His idea was, let me distract so that we can get that egg in place and you can blow this thing up. And it played out the way Frankenstein. There is a strategist to Frankenstein, and I love that part of him too. This is a guy who, throughout the centuries, has just learned how to adapt and survive. And there's something cool about that. It's on the surface he looks so like a smash and grab monster, and he is that and so much more. That's what I love about it. It isn't that he isn't that. He is that. But if you think that's the whole story, you are missing the point. And that's what I love too, because it's clearly not the whole story with him.
Yeah, and actually Velcro gets a thank you and a good job. Now wait, he gets a good job and a thank you. So he gets a well done. That's
Did you notice there's no joking from him there?
Right.
It's a very standard, really all like, yeah, no sweat, Frank, no sweat. Just kind of a real basic kind of, and I loved that tone shift too.
He recognizes how big of a statement that is. Yeah.
And even the dialogue between the two of them after that. His interaction with Frank is very different after that. A lot less joking, more laying out straight facts. Even when his analysis of Shade, I won't miss Father Time, but I'll miss the toys and gadgets and that type of thing. And he's much more subdued now. It's almost like there's a maturity to him that's instantly, Frank just gave me a high five. Like, whoa, wait a minute.
I don't want to ruin this moment by saying something stupid. Yeah.
No, like he's looking at me as like a colleague right now. Like we're buddied up. Like I'm going to step up my game. And I think this led to, one more to go, Frank. This seems too easy. And they're talking about this whole thing now. Look at even the way they're riding. It's not one behind the other. They're riding next to each other. Mm-hmm. I love that, like, this is an evolution of their relationship. It feels like, a spaghetti western where these two are like buddies now, Lone Ranger and Tonto. Yeah. It's really cool how that all played out. And it leads to that part where that sacrifice from him, I think, just meant so much more because I felt like Velcoro has become a hero because of his relationship with Frank. I mean, he could have pulled away at any point in time. Instead, he kept firing that weapon in every different energy faction that he could, knowing that, you know what, I'm done here. And in the end, he wasn't screaming, save me. He's screaming, Frank, I'm sorry. What a way to go out. You know, I mean, because that's not Velcoro. It's not the Velcoro we saw last issue. It's not the Velcoro we've seen before. This is a guy who, through the inspiration of the desperation of the situation and the inspiration of Frank, has all of a sudden become, I think, something more than he was before. That was neat.
Oh God, yeah. And I said he went down swinging, he went down fighting, but there was that moment of I felt bad for the guy.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I felt bad for the fact that I was thinking, you know, and throughout my first read through, I really do have to say, I was thinking maybe this guy is going to betray him. Maybe he's going to sign up with the Rot. Maybe that's why he was after the pieces, parts, and whatnot. You know, but right there, you really see the fact that he's one of the good guys, and he was just misunderstood as to what he was doing, his intentions, it was that persona he was putting up to kind of, you know, the walls he was putting up around him. And you see the good character. You see him. He's shooting everything he's got, changing ammo, trying this, trying to finally, he's like, oh, hell. You know, he's like, I'm done. Sorry, Frank. And I love that. You know, the fact that you brought up the fact that he says, I'm sorry, Frank. He failed his friend. He couldn't stop the guy. He, you know, did everything he could. And his first thought isn't, help me. Ah! No, he went down, you know, he went down a hero. And that was just a cool moment. That was the redemption of Velcoro.
What are these creatures at the end? You know, where Nina's saying that he's not alone. You know, part of me is like wondering, is this some form of metal men? But then I'm like, well, they wouldn't be all gold. So I don't know what's going on here. I do not know, and I'm going to feel like a dunce if it's something from the classic DC mythos that I'm like not catching, because I do a pretty good job over the years. Like, I've read the Who's Who's and stuff like that. And when I say read them, I never read them cover to cover. I've skimmed through, then, you know, looked over entries that I haven't read before. I've looked at every page. I've never read them cover to cover. You know, and that's like the Who's Who volumes were always like an encyclopedia, a dictionary, so to speak, more an encyclopedia of every DC character. So I always look through to, you know, see interesting characters that I never knew before. I would tend to read the ones that I had no exposure to, just to get myself versed and familiar. But that's going back a long way.
Well, here's my theory on these.
Okay.
My theory on this is, one, the gold is an armor protecting them from the rot. You think about the qualities that is gold, with the purity, how it doesn't corrode, it doesn't decay, it doesn't, you know. I'm thinking that these people found that as a natural barrier.
Women, by the way, women. They're all women.
Amazons. First thought that popped in my head. Now, granted, the Amazons have been kind of taken out in the Wonder Woman book, so that's why I didn't know exactly. But I saw all females, all in armor, all warriors, and I'm going with warriors based on the fact that, you know, they're still alive in the rot world and they're willing. They look like they're willing to throw down. So female warriors, Amazons are the first thing that pops in my head. The gold, as I said, I think that's an armor that they figured out will protect them from the rot. So that's my theory on who these females are. I
don't really have anything to add to that, other than that makes a lot of sense to me. I don't really have an answer to that one. I greatly enjoyed it. I just the whole series was terrific. I enjoyed going on the ride and journey with Frank. I love that at first I'm kind of like, why are they bringing Frankenstein into this? Now I totally get why they brought Frankenstein into this, and what he's shown us. He really shown us a very different viewpoint of the series. So I would encourage anybody who's reading Animal Man and Swamp Thing and like you haven't been a Frankenstein reader, I would recommend picking up these Rot World issues, because there's really this sense of this is what was happening while Animal Man and Swamp Thing were away. You know, bringing him into then the present day with them. And we're going to start seeing his role in the ending of all this, however it's going to end.
Yeah, because if he gets the final piece, which I'm assuming he's going to get the final piece in 15, he's still on Easter Island. So he's got to figure out a way to get from Easter Island to the valley and assemble the pieces together.
I'm going to say it again, though, with Swamp Thing and Animal Man and Frankenstein in this event. I love that this is an event that you wouldn't normally expect. Like, you would not normally expect these books to have such a big event.
Yeah.
And, you know, usually these are types of characters that the only time you see them in an event is when there's a universe-wide event. And this is really important because every title should feel like an event. And this is a great way to build a new attachment to different kinds of books, is to say to people, hey, what you're getting over in Green Lantern, what you're getting in the Batman books, you're getting in the Superman books, you can get here. You can get this kind of storytelling here. I give them a lot of credit for doing this. I think it's a terrific story. It feels just as powerful to me. I'm digging this. This doesn't diminish anything that's going on. The Superman books, what's going on over there right now. I love this Hell on Earth stuff they're doing. Batman, obviously, I'm a Batman junkie, and it couldn't be better right now. And the stuff that's going on in Green Lantern has maintained itself. We're seeing a Justice League event starting to build up. I'm so glad that we're getting this in these type of books too. You need to do this. It's something that really adds some validity to why these titles are here. The creative teams that were involved in this have hit a home run. This is, to me, one of the most exciting events that I'm currently reading right now. I'm with you. Like, when this is done, I am going to immediately read both Swamp Thing and Animal Man because I want to know what's going to happen. It was very hard not to read them. It's why I didn't even look at my stack. Because I'm going to be honest with you, if I picked up those books, I would have read them.
Well, they're still in the package. Mm-hmm. They're still in the wrappings. So I didn't open up because, like you, I would have. If I would have, I pulled the box. I saw that there's there, and I left them that way. I didn't open up the packaging because if I opened that packaging, I was going to read those because I really got to know what's going on with Iran, and I didn't want to throw anything off from the read. I didn't want to have any extra knowledge. That I just wanted to let everything go and just go with what I have until the discussion's over.
Let's do this, though. Let's do some listener voicemails, and I want to tell people why I'm so glad I reread Justice League Dark.
There it is, going into that tunnel.
How's it going, guys? This is Brandon calling again. First off, I want to say Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you guys are having a good one. I'm just getting back from 3 lunches, suppers, turkey, dirty rice, lovely, lovely New Orleans Thanksgiving meals, gumbo and all. It was delicious. It was a great Thanksgiving. I hope you and yours are having just the same. So right off the bat, I'd like to say one of the things I'm thankful for this year, discovering the show at the end of last year. You guys have been great to listen to for a year, and you've reinvigorated my love of comics, and I thank you both for that. On that note, also thankful for Batman. My God, what a year with Batman. The Court of Owls, I did not think it would get any better after, and it's just we're getting hit in the back of the head with just great material. You guys are right. It's left and right. I don't know how it can get better, and it just keeps getting better. So epic. I was reading Batman 14. I'm listening to the show right now, and I'm nodding my head with you guys, as you would say. It's so incredible. I don't know where Joker's going to go this time with any of this stuff. It's just so epic. He's destroying everything. It's crazy. I mean, even in Catwoman, I've started dabbling in a Catwoman recently to get the full side of the Joker stories. I've picked up everything, and he's seriously messing with her too at this moment. He's burning Alfred's eyes, he's blowing up Nightwing, and he's putting Catwoman in a suit that has poisoned her. The man is crazy, and not to mention Suicide Squad and what he did with Harley. My. I know the Joker's always been kind of a twisted character, but he's definitely he's going off the deep end this time, and he's not only going off the deep end, he's planning it all with such precision, and it's so scary how he's a step ahead of Batman this time. I mean, him and Batman have always had this back and forth thing, but he's really committed this time. He knows what he wants, and he's going after it. Death of the Family, I gotta say, I'm pretty sure that he knows the identities of everybody. I mean, especially after the conversation he had with Barbara on the phone in the Batgirl 14, where he told her to put on your outfit and all that stuff. So I'm pretty sure he's got the identities of everybody sewn up. And I don't know if maybe I'm reading this into this a little bit, that Batman might actually, after this is said and done with, exclude himself, but maybe the family excludes him. Maybe that's what this is leading to. Maybe Joker is twisting the family against him. There's something big going on with Jason Todd, and if you read the Zero issue, how he orchestrated him to become Robin and all of this stuff. I don't exactly have my in my head how I see it happening, but I definitely think maybe he's turning them all against Batman. Maybe Death of the Family is literally the family turning on Batman and isolating him from the family, and moving in their own direction. Sometimes the family moves away from the father figure. Maybe this is what the Joker is doing. Everybody says he's isolating them, and that's kind of seen. But maybe it's not just by what he's doing, but literally turning them against Batman and having them say finally it's enough. Maybe it's through what he's doing with Alfred or the thing with Jason Todd. I don't know. But it's great that it's making everybody think in such different directions and just look at the Joker and go, wow, sick, twisted, wow. I almost think I like him better with the jumpsuit too. I gotta say, when I made my call about the reimagining the costumes and things like that for the new 52, I am spot on with the Joker. I didn't know what they were doing when they cut his face off, and I don't know if they, I don't think Scott had this in mind when he had his face cut off, but what a way it's made him even more scary. I mean, any guy walking around with a leather-faced version of his own face on is kind of creepy in itself, and the things he's doing. So that's crazy. And on one last note, guys, I was listening to your last show, and you had a conversation about multiverse, and I really started thinking that I think there's one book left after Constantine for DC to announce with the new lineup. What would people think if maybe they would do an anthology book on the multiverse? I think every month that would be incredible. And, there are people that are like me, continuity buffs. We love to find our stories and have them line up. But we also like single issues that are feel-good stories that you can just kind of tell and be one and done and over with, but still have, some sort of meaning in the long run. So what if they got an editor to get on the ball with whatever they would do with an anthology book? And every time they bring out one of the multiverses, because DC has to put their number on it, they probably would say it would be 52 multiverses. That's how many they have. So how about every time you do a story in the multiverse, you're just fleshing out that world a little bit more, and you make sure you go, okay, well, this one was Earth 36. We'll scrap that over there. That way, if we ever do a story again on Earth 36, we can pull that out and go, okay, well, if we reference anything, this is how it was, and go with a monthly anthology book like that. I was just, it was a thought I had. I think it would be great. I think it's a way to kind of tell your one and dones, or maybe, 3 to 4 stories at a time, group it together if you want. You can do many things with that at that point and have good stories and still kind of get people's needs for, different versions of Batman, Superman, or whole different perspectives on worlds, because we know what's going on in Earth 2, and God knows it's great right now. It's one of my top reads every month, right up there with Batman, and I can't believe I'd be saying this, but it's actually over my Justice League right now. If I had to rate it, Earth 2 beats out Justice League, hands down, and that's kind of weird to say, but it's true. If Earth 2 and Justice League came out on the same day, I would pick up Earth 2 to read first. It's that good, but that's another story in itself. I've talked about it before. So anyway, guys, let me know what you think about the multiverse idea. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving, and take it easy.
I want to say first that I agree with him on Earth 2 and Justice League, but let me put a disclaimer on that, saying I love that it's 2 top quality books on of that caliber that we're having that discussion about. I feel like saying that doesn't diminish either book, and I feel like anybody who would say, but I read Justice League first because I feel that Justice League is a superior book, I wouldn't argue with them because I get that. Oh, I think you feel that way, right? Isn't Justice League more everything?
That's my lines.
And honestly, there's nothing to dispute over that. I think they're both top quality books. I'm like, yeah, it makes sense.
and I think Earth 2 is an amazing title. I really and deeply enjoy reading it, but there is always just, if I had you put the 2 titles in front of me, I am probably going to grab the Justice League over it. Just, it's one of those things where in my statement's not knocking anything on Earth 2. That's a fabulous, amazing title. And it's just, I don't know. I think there's a lot of us, we have different preferences. We'll grab different books for different reasons. And it's not just necessarily saying, I think this one is better than this one. There's just a reason, and some of it's the subconscious level where you reach towards that one title beforehand. Like between, a Batman and Superman title. You put the two down in front of me, 9 times out of 10, I will reach for the Soup first, but this whole death of the family story has got me reaching towards Batman first. Now, I'm not saying I don't like Superman, because the Superman crossover, The Hell on Earth, is a great story. Superman's my guy, but there is just some, what's going on here? Ooh, hold on, let's see where. And it pulls you in. So there's going to be, it's a tough call to say, what is your stack? What's your read order? What's your thing? There's a lot of choices made on that, where it's not just about, I think A is better than B. I'm going with this one.
As we continue to explore the Zero issues with the characters that we haven't gotten to yet, when Jim and I talk about which ones we want to discuss for the week, we jump to the ones that we're like, what are you really digging right now? What are you interested in right now? And that's what drives us. That's why a lot of times I get frustrated when I see around the net so many people complaining about comics that they dislike, because with the amount of quality there, this discussion is perfectly valid. Earth 2 and Justice League, which one's the better book? I don't know that you can make that distinction, nor should you need to. It's the one that you prefer to read first, like Brandon was saying. I'm in the same boat with him. I read Earth 2 first, if they both came out the same week, because I'm just very into the world that's being crafted there. I think it's a top quality book. Justice League, I think, though, quality-wise, if you ask me which is the better book as far as sheer quality, I think both books are of equal quality. I mean, I think they're, and that's an immense compliment to both. I think there's a lot of books. Batman is a great example of a book. Aquaman. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Batgirl is a book. Wonder Woman. I think there's a lot of titles. Everything we're discussing on this episode and last episode, these are top quality books. I have a very tough time deciding what to read first. And I don't know that I could put a read order together now, say that this is my constant read order, because I think that there's certain storylines that are happening in certain books where they bump that up the stack. Like this week, I guarantee you, I haven't read anything in my stack yet. The first 2 books I'm reading are Swamp Thing and Animal Man.
Yeah.
Is that a normal? No. Not both of those books like that. And I don't know which one out of the 2 I want to read more. And both are titles that I'm greatly enjoying. I want to read both of them and see what's going on in their event. So no matter what's in that stack, those are going to be my first 2. And that's not, if I made up a list last month, it probably would have been different. And that's great, because I like that books can kind of flip-flop around, because we've got so much quality coming out right now. Which is why I encourage people, if there's books that aren't being talked about that you're digging, call in with them. Post them on Facebook pages, not just ours, all over the place. Post them on Twitter. Post them on the net. Get the word out to people that these are books they should be reading. Go to DC's website and post them. Get the word out about some of these titles that you're digging, because my firm belief is people are looking for titles to be pointed to that they should be reading, not titles that they should avoid. There's so much of a big stack in previews that usually my big problem is not trying to find titles to avoid. It's trying to decide between the great titles that I want to read. And when I see a bunch of people geeking out about a book, that motivates me to read that book. I'm not motivated very often by snark, only because I feel a lot of times the people that are very snarky about books don't read the book, or have read 1 or 2 issues of the book and haven't read it in a long time and dismissed it, in which case they're not really an expert. And my other opinion is, if somebody's reading a book that they're hating that much and they keep reading it, and they haven't had the good sense to switch to something else that they might really enjoy, I question what kind of an expert they are too. Because I really want somebody who can point me at something that I would dig. So that tends to be the way, and you don't have to, nobody listening to this has to agree with that approach to finding titles. That's just what works for me. Somebody who's motivated, where they're like, I really want people to know why this book is awesome. That will tend to point me towards that title, because that's when we geek out on this show. We don't talk about every title every week. We are motivated in choosing topics by this show by things that are interesting us now. And I hope that comes across in the recordings that we do, that these aren't things that I feel like we have to say something nice about this book because we haven't said something nice about it in a while. No, I want to talk about this book because it's got things in it that are making me want to podcast. And I think that's a motivating factor for what we do. So I like his ideas there with that. Back to Batman. I want to correct one thing that he said. He was mentioning Batgirl and that it was the Joker on the phone with Batgirl. That was not the Joker on the phone with Batgirl. That was Barbara's brother, James Jr.
Yeah.
So if you look through the issue and catch the end, James Jr. actually reveals when Barbara's in the middle of that situation about mom and everything that's going on, James Jr. reveals that he was manipulating Barbara into that spot. So what we know from that issue is that James Jr. knows her identity. We don't know if the Joker does. Now, I'm of two minds on the whole Joker knowing, not knowing thing. There is part of myself that thinks maybe he does know. Maybe he knows for some of them, maybe not all of them. Maybe he knows for all of them. There's another part of me that thinks when the Joker's doing that, he's doing it to totally mess with Batman, or in his mind, knowing them means he knows them at their core. Because of years of dealing with them, he knows how to get to them. He knows how to get to them in a way that's going to show Bruce that they're a liability to him and that he needs to be a better Batman without them, which is his overall goal of this one. I don't know which of those is right, but I see those as being the three different possibilities of what's going on here. It's either he knows everything, parts of it, or nothing, and he's messing with Batman. And in his mind, his statement was true because of how well he knows. There's like that unspoken thing that he knows between them all. I don't care which one it is, to be honest, and that's just my take on it. And Jim, you might have a different one. I'll let you do it in a second. That's my take on it. I'm with Brandon's point here, though. What he's saying is that it's causing a lot of people to share different sides and different viewpoints as far as what they're thinking about the whole thing. The truth of the matter is this has developed and he's right, a very creepy Joker. This takes me back to The Killing Joke. I remember reading The Killing Joke when it was on the stand. I remember owning multiple copies of Killing Joke because they released it, and the only difference between them was the color of the lettering. Because there came a point during that time, it was like if you had a first printing of The Killing Joke, it was instantly through the roof because nobody could get it. So I remember bagging and boarding that and having another like second print, and then it became like, well, then you pick up the third print because it had a different
have the full
color
collection,
right, of different letters. And that's the only difference between the cover was the different letters, and that inside it said second printing or third printing. So, you know, it was that kind of story. But where there's the connection and why that story is so endearing to people is at that time, it added a creep factor to the Joker with what happened with Barbara being shot, with what he did. Let's take what he did to Jim Gordon at that circus, and just how depraved and horrid it was. It put the Joker in a different creepy place that we hadn't seen at the time on that level. Enter to today. Scott Snyder has done that again. He's taken the Joker, and I agree with him. The jumpsuit, the whole thing. I don't feel it's a different guy. I feel that like the face being cut off and all of this has put him in a place where he is creepy on a level that we never realized. He's intelligent on a level that we never realized. He's not, but yet the creepy factor is this is all stuff we should have seen about him because Scott Snyder's done it in a way where it makes me feel this has always been part of his character. These are things we should have always known were here. As Batman's learning more about him through this, we're seeing why Batman was always worried about him. Why Damian's statement about him was so wrong in the very beginning of all this. Dismissing the Joker. You know, as being somebody who just have his face cut off and, you know, all that stuff. There's more to it than that. I think Batman was right. He wanted to have that done. This is what the kind of guy that we're dealing with here. I love this. I think people who played the Arkham City games are seeing a Joker that they're like, okay. And I see this is, if you got anybody who's a gamer that's a friend of yours who's not reading Batman right now, you should be handing him or her Death of the Family and saying, hey, if you're not reading comics and you liked those games, because I think those games had this, you know, really dark, rich story in them. This is the ultimate gateway into comics for gamers who liked the Batman Arkham City games. I think anytime you want to do a gateway, you find that connective comic, and I think that storyline really would lead a gamer right into this world because the tone matches. And I think for somebody who's like, the Joker was cool in that, this extends and takes it even farther than the game did. And I think it's something that there's a natural attachment that people could have to this storyline from it. And I encourage you to do that. It's a great holiday gift. Not for me, because we don't get paid by DC. I think people should remember that. I'm always a fan of, I want this hobby around 30 years from now. Because, I've been reading, I'm 40, going to be 42. I've been reading comics my whole life. I want them around still when, I'm 72. And that's something where the only way that's going to happen is if we as fans try to promote this to people that could genuinely be readers and would find something of value in this. And I think this is a story that nowadays any fan of Batman material or who liked Dark Knight Rises or who liked that game should be reading, because it's just great material. I'm sorry, I've been blabbing on and on, Jim, but where are you at as far as Death of the Family and the Joker and all that? I know we've discussed this before. Is there anything new you want to add to it, or in your thinking, or anything that I didn't give you a chance to speak? So please do so.
Well, the Joker knows what the Joker knows, and that's, I think, yeah.
You know what? Wait, please don't get me wrong here. I'll let you go ahead. I love that because it's true. I'm not laughing at you because I'm thinking you're nuts in what you said. It's funny. What you just said right there is basically taking everything I just rambled on about, and you summed it up in one statement. I'm sitting here, I'm boy, I could have just said that and we would have been done already and on to the next voicemail.
Exactly.
That was great.
You're welcome.
Is that all you have? Because that's really, if it is, that's really funny because I think what you said was very eloquent and perfect. But go ahead if there's something else.
Well, I'm actually going to say enough said.
That was great. Then the other thing we didn't discuss was Brandon's idea of a multiverse anthology. I've said before, I love anthology. I don't think that's what it's going to be. And Brandon, I don't think, was implying that. He was saying, wouldn't it be great if that's what the other title was? And I agree with him. I would love that. I don't think we're going to see anything like that until Multiversity itself is released and they see how it does with the fans. But I think that my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Jim, if you've heard anything different, my understanding is that Multiversity is supposed to be, with the New 52 now, reintroducing the concept of what the multiverse means. And I'm guessing then after that, similar to like what a Seven Soldiers did, it would be up to the creators to take the multiverse where they want to go with it.
Yeah.
Is that how you're understanding it?
Yeah, and it's still, every time, any in any con they ask about it, it's still on the slate to come out. So I don't know when it's coming, though. I haven't heard the definitive date it's going to be released by blank. But it's sometime in 2013.
Yeah, I was under the impression it's this year coming up. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Hey, Rage and Bullet Sky, this is Raphael from the No Apologies podcast. I just want to give you guys major props for the latest episode of Rage and Bullets. You guys keep me up to date on the DC comics that I don't get. And you guys continually do a good job. It's a great listen while I'm at the gym or I'm on the train in New York. I wanted to give props to Detective Comics by shoe writer John Layman and artist Jason Fabak. I had fallen off of Detective Comics during Tony Daniel's run. I've come back to it, and I'm really enjoying it. Love the show, guys. Keep it up.
I want to give a shout-out to No Apologies, actually, because No Apologies. It's funny that he was saying that. I listen to a lot of podcasts on my way to work, to and from. I also listen to them when I work out as well. My iPod's loaded up with friends of the show and podcasts, and No Apologies is one of them that I listen to as well because of it. I love his point about John Layman, because we had a friend of the show, David Barron, on a while ago, and he's always talked about, ILL was I Love Layman, and it was about John Layman and his respect for John Layman as a creator. And now we're getting John Layman at DC doing books like Detective Comics, and he's hitting a home run. And that's one of the great things I think about the Batman titles right now. I'm, geeking out like crazy over Scott Snyder's work on Batman, but it's like every single Batman title that I'm reading, we've talked about Batman and Robin many, many times. Detective Comics is terrific. The Dark Knight has also stepped it up. I mean, I think all of these books are really fantastic. The ones featuring, and these are just the ones featuring Batman. I think they've all, and then you can't ignore Ink. So there's really 5 Batman books going right now, and they're all great for their own reasons. But I agree with him on Detective. I think Detective has stepped up. Are you enjoying Detective?
Oh, yeah. Detective's one of the ones I'm really enjoying.
You know, it's funny. I'm glad that he called in, too, because speaking of podcasts, besides the Great No Apologies, I want to shout out DC Noise. DC Noise just recorded I just saw it on Facebook. They just recorded episode 199 and 200. And it's been such an amazing ride with the DC Noise podcast. And it's been one that's been very fortunate throughout its entire tenure. It started with Peter Rios, and all the way through to present day, there's always been quality people associated with DC Noise. And I think a lot of times in the past, people wondered, like, are they your competitive podcast? Not at all. I've always felt like one of the cool things about DC Noise as a podcast, and the whole podcasting community in general, but DC Noise in particular, because it's the other DC podcast, the great thing about our two podcasts are, because of the personalities of the people on both shows, you get a very different experience for both. And I highly encourage anybody, if you've never listened to DC Noise before, they're celebrating an anniversary. It's the coolest thing in the world. I'm going to be listening to 199 and 200 because I love celebrating with podcasts that are hitting those landmarks and those milestones. I know the work that goes into continuing to publish a podcast and persevering and being there. I love podcasting. That's why I'm here. It's a lot of work, though. You know, in the course of a day, you remember, like, you take a look at the hour count of the podcast, and there's a lot of pre-production and post-production preparation, all that to go into a podcast, to put it out and to persevere and to keep doing it. My hat's off to DC Noise for where they're at, being able to celebrate this wonderful anniversary. It's been a terrific show all the way through. And it's great that it's continuing on, and I love the camaraderie the guys have on the show. I can't wait to listen to those episodes. I just wanted to really shout it out. 199 and 200, big episodes for them. Also listen to the Great No Apologies podcast. There's a tremendous amount of podcasts out there that are friends of our show. I try to make sure that I have them, you know, especially if anybody calls in, put them in our show notes. But beyond that, I also try to have links up on our website to everybody. If you're a fellow podcaster out there and I have a link that's out of date, or I don't have your podcast up there, please let me know. Because first of all, one thing is, maybe I haven't listened to it yet, and if I haven't, I want to correct that, because I genuinely love connecting with our friends that way and hearing their material as well. But I also want to make sure that I'm getting the word out to our listening audience that, hey, these are friends of ours. These are people that like you. Obviously, if they listen to this show on any level, whether they listen to one episode or every episode, there's a commonality in thought about comics. And there's something for you to connect with in their podcasts. So if their names are up there in those links, they're there for a reason. It's because they're people that are friends of ours that have connected through this, because that's the only way. How do we connect? Through the podcasting medium. So there's a thought process that we all have about this love for this medium that links us. And I really appreciate Raphael calling in, and I loved his thoughts on Detective Comics, because I agree with him. I think that book's gotten very edgy. Yeah. I love what Layman's doing over there. It's really good stuff. We're going to be talking about Detective. We haven't talked about that, I think, in the new... Have we? I don't know that we did Zero.
No, I don't think we've done that Zero yet.
But we'll do Zero and then get up to the current issue if we haven't done that. If not, we'll do Detective as a separate thing, because you don't have to twist my arm to talk Batman. And I'd really love to talk about the great work that John Layman's doing on there if we have not discussed it yet. So we will definitely do that. Jim, I want to shout out real quick, you know, speaking of different DC swag and things. I went to DC's website, and I got one of these We Can Be Heroes water bottles. And if you go to wecanbeheroes.org, it's donating to the charities in the Horn of Africa, people who are in trouble, who need food, who need, you know, medicine and different things like that. I just think it's really cool. I'm, as a fan, you know, we've seen different, like Hero Initiative and different things like that popping up in comics. I think it's great that geek culture can band together and support causes. So when I see stuff like this, like I needed a new water bottle. I happened to be at their website. I wasn't planning to buy one online. I was going to go to Target and just grab one. I saw this and saw that it was, you know, donated to charity. And I'm like, you know what? If I'm going to grab something, I'm going to grab the version that'll donate something to charity. And I think that's really cool that it was something. It's geeky swag. It looks cool. It's one of those aluminum water bottles. And it's got this really cool logo of all of the Justice League, the New 52 Justice League, in like a shadow version with it's dark blue on the background. You can see it on their site. It's, you know, the DC website when you go there for shopping. And it's cool that, part of the profits go towards this. So it's a really great water bottle, though. I've been using it at work, and I just thought it was something I was going to shout out. And then I also, of course, bought Dark Knight Rises this week. I got the Blu-ray version with the collector's edition with the shattered cowl.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was worth it because it looks really nice. And I ended up getting it just because I thought this would be look great on my shelf, and it does. So if anybody was on the fence about that and didn't make a purchase yet of it, I highly recommend it. It looks really, really cool. And I loved the movie. I do find it's funny, the ending, for as controversial as it was, I guess, for some people, I find myself, after we watched it twice now, I find myself going back to the ending and watching just the ending through again, with the whole reveal. I get uplifted by that. I thought it was a really great ending, to that particular trilogy, and left the series in a place where they can reboot, do whatever at that point. It's great. I'm happy with that. But I loved the choices that they made in the ending, because I think I was really convinced it was going to go somewhere very dark. And I was so thrilled that they teased me to that and it didn't go there. And I just loved how it all played out. So for me, it was, I don't know if anybody out there, how many people out there feel as strongly about that movie as I did, but I really enjoyed it. It was great to have that. And I got that swag of having that thing sitting there, and I'm looking at it right now, and it's really cool. Dark Knight Rises logo with that shattered bat symbol is on the bottom at the base, and then it is the cowl there, the one that Bane tossed. And I thought it was really cool. So I wanted to shout it out as being something great. Did you have a chance to pick up Dark Knight Rises yet?
No, I haven't yet. I will.
Yeah, I have watched it twice now this week, because it just came out this week, and I watched it twice, and then I ended up after I watched it twice, I ended up going back and rewinding and watching just that ending again, just because it was so awesome. I think I've seen the ending like 10 times now. I'm just talking about like the last few minutes where you see the final reveal of everything, including the part with the autopilot. Which I think is just so cool, because you see that look in Morgan Freeman's face of like, when did that happen?
Yeah.
I just loved it. It was great. So I highly recommend picking it up if you haven't. It's one of those. It's on my short list of being one of my favorite Batman films of all time, and it was really cool. I ended up doing the marathon. I did Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and then Dark Knight Rises. Not all in one sitting, but I started.
I was about to say you're my hero, but now you're just in.
Yeah, no, I started on Sunday, and I watched Batman Begins. Then Monday, I watched The Dark Knight, and then Tuesday, Dark Knight Rises when it came out. So it was like a 3-day kind of marathon. Only because it was kind of a marathon for me, because I had other things I had to be getting done for work. So I was fitting that in. There was no way I could have done it in one sitting, time-wise. But I'm really glad that I fit it in. And it was really great to see those 3 movies together again, because it's one big, huge story that's really well done.
Yeah, just get the men, the adult diaper, and just one sitting, go.
See, here's the thing. I don't need the adult diaper for that. Really,
there's a pause function, Jim.
Yeah, no, but I mean, even that. I'm going to be honest with you. I can pace my eating and drinking, so I wouldn't need that. So I just want to clarify that my bowels are just fine. Unless you find that particularly comfy, in which case maybe I would consider it for that reason. But this is why I don't watch movies at your place. For people that don't know, Jim hands them out at the door. That's funny, the adult diaper.
Like a human helicopter, the Flash rotates his body, rising faster, faster!
Well, let's go on to Justice League Dark, Zero issue. The writer is Jeff Lemire. Pencils by Lee Garbett. With inks by Cam Smith. With Jack Purcell, Scott Hanna, Walden Wong. Colors by Pete Pantazis. And letterer Rob Lay. Ryan Sook, cover artist. With Katie Kubert as assistant editor. And Brian Cunningham as editor.
I love Justice League Dark. What I love about it is it's not trying to be another Justice League book. It's really taking a look at the characters that are in there and saying, we are a team that is all about the supernatural. It reminds me of Shadow Pact. What I love about Shadow Pact is they're really unique characters that you wouldn't normally see together in a team book. They're usually characters that are put on a team because they have trouble bundling them into solo books. They work better to me like this. It's great to see them because they're having the kind of missions that make them unique. It feels very Vertigo-y in its presentation, and I like that. It's like a nice little hybrid behind DC and Vertigo, because a lot of these characters are characters that have had a history in Vertigo. And they're pulling a lot of the quality traits that worked for them in Vertigo and using them in the DC universe, and effectively making them a part of the DC universe, but also setting them apart from the regular superhero books in DC. And I really like that. The other thing I really liked about this issue is it set up a history with Constantine and Zatanna that's been hinted at in the book, but we're really seeing, like, how did these two wind up being together? It made me like both characters even more because of what they went through. I like their flaws. I mean, there's something about them. I like that they're both very, very flawed characters, but Zatanna's clearly still the one that's more rational. It made her more endearing to me in a way that I really like. I like Zatanna as a character, and I really found myself rooting for her throughout this story, getting caught up with this riffraff, and yet still being Zatanna. And there was something that I really enjoyed about that. How are you feeling about Justice League Dark?
Oh, God, I'm loving this. I am deeply, deeply loving Justice League Dark. And when they first announced Justice League Dark, I was like, okay. And it kind of threw me just because I'm like, Justice League, a darker version of it, magic. And they could have very easily called this Shadow Pact in my mind. And that's, it has the Justice League name, but they even kind of joke around. That's more of a tongue-in-cheek governmental type code name for it. It's not actually what they refer to themselves as. You'll never hear any member of Justice League Dark saying, "We're a part of Justice League Dark. Go for it." No, that's not their style. It's just it needed a name, it needed a code name, it needed something, for bureaucracy. So guess what? Boom, it's that. And because of that, the fact that the team's not embracing it, because the team doesn't refer to themselves as that, it makes it so cool. It makes it just perfect for this title, perfect for these characters, the fact that they would never say, this is who we are. They are just together for whatever reason. There's some disaster that needs to be averted, and they're the ones who have to be able to do it because this is their area. And they're better together than if they are, they couldn't handle it separately. They need to work together. They recognize we need this group together to deal with this problem. Next issue, it may be another thing. It may be different people in there.
Yes.
A rotation cast is perfect for this type of title.
Amen. One of the things I love about this book is the fact that it makes sense that, first of all, I don't know that they would call themselves a team. They're a group of people that come together out of the fact that they know the skill sets that each other have, and they know that that's something that they're lacking or that they will be more enhanced by having more of on their particular missions. And that you're going to see people pulled in a lot of times not out of personal choice into the situation, like Amethyst and I Vampire. Both of those characters are being pulled in, and they don't necessarily want to be there but react accordingly to who they are as a character and the reasons why they were brought in. It looks very different for each of them, even though they were both brought in out of choices that aren't their own. I like that one brings a very bright spot to it. The other one is reluctantly participating in something, and I like that. I like the distinction between the two. So it's really a cool, edgy aspect of the book. In this story, in the Zero issue, I like that we're seeing a background of Constantine. We're seeing a guy who has been delving into the magical arts, trying to learn more, learning who the masters are. And he finds something in Nick Necro where he can say, hey, this is somebody I want to meet. This is somebody who I want to learn from. There are certain skill sets that this guy has that can take me further in the direction I want to go. He's seeking a sensei. I don't even know if he could put it in those terms. He's seeking a knowledge base, though, that will make him go further than he wants to go. This is an important statement on who Constantine is. This need to know, this need to learn, this need to explore, this need to gather. That's a part of Constantine that I think separates him often from being a good guy or a bad guy, and also brings him into situations where he makes questionable moral choices, because it's the quest and the end game that's often more important than the steps to get there. And a lot of times people and objects and concepts are expendable to him in order to achieve the goal. He cares about that to a certain extent, and will have moral issues afterwards because of it sometimes. But so I don't think he's this horrible man, but a lot of times he's a very selfish man, and it's all about his end game goals. And there's something about that's what drives him, the end game. So he's very driven. He won't give up, but his motivations are not always pure. I find him fascinating because of that. I think this is the same guy you get in the Vertigo series. The Vertigo series I cannot recommend highly enough. And I'm loving Justice League Dark because I think they've nailed who this character is in the DC universe, and there's something about him working here. The Constantine book, in order to succeed for me, has got to keep those qualities in place from him. He's not an easy person to pin down as far as who is Constantine. That's something that I really like. And I like that he's sometimes haunted by past choices, too. He should be.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, this guy is such the opposite of what I usually love in a comic book that I'm drawn even closer to him because of the fact that I'm normally the dun-da-da, that's what I want. Well, he is so far from that. He does sometimes save the world, he does save the universe, and he does the right thing, but there's always going to be questions as to his motivation. Why did he do it? He didn't just save the world to save the world. He saved the world to protect himself. He saved the world because he wanted this. He saved the world because of that. It's you get to see. That's the great thing about this character. That's why I'm very excited for the Constantine title that's going to come out, because I want more Constantine stories. And this right here was just this great introduction for him into this universe where we're seeing the young, Constantine. We're seeing the guy who's just learning the magic trade. He's got a solid background, but he wants more. He needs more. He needs better knowledge. He's going to learn from the best. He's going to learn from the people who learn from the best. And I love just seeing that pursuit of knowledge and a little bit of snarkiness, a little bit of the Constantine edge, his style, his swagger, his strut. It's a really cool issue.
Yeah, that's something I really enjoyed about it. I love the whole Zatanna bit when she shows up, too, where Nick goes, shh, she's about to start, and Constantine's in awe of her. There's something about Zatanna as a character. There should be that kind of feel about her, because there's a mystery to her, something mysterious. There's a way she carries herself, from her dress sense straight on through, that she's a showman, and she knows how to draw people into the show, into the game, to everything that she's doing. That's something she learned from her father. And when you're a female and you're doing it, it's going to look decidedly different than when it's a male, especially when there's males in the room. And I would assume that the reverse is true for females who find something charming and captivating from, like, her dad. So I think she's learned a lot of these traits from her dad, who probably used his mustache and his charm and his swagger, in a way that I could see him being very charming. She even addresses in the comics, especially in this New 52 run, about how a lot of that stuff with her dad was the outside show. It hid the man on the inside who should be respected for who he was and how powerful he was and his knowledge base. So I love that distinction. That's something that was really slick in this whole story. So it's just something I geeked out at totally, because I think this really has defined these characters in a way that I've always seen them. But I'm glad that in the New 52, it's like, this is who they are, and this is who they're going to be moving forward. And in my eyes, it's who they've always been. And I'm glad that core part is still stuck with them.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought up Zatara with Zatanna kind of defending her dad, because that was something that really struck. And that was a really, a moment in this issue that really had me going, because that was, Constantine and Zatanna going back and forth talking. And it was one of those kind of humanistic people moments of Constantine when we don't see him as a complete, SOB. And it was just this cool moment. But you see her not just defending her father. It wasn't about defending her father. It was about this is a statement of fact. He was hardcore. He was a warrior. He was a soldier of magic. This, he has the cheesy outlook, that public persona that everyone had, but that was just part of the act. what he truly was this. And it's a really neat to see her, just rationalize that and state that and bring it up, because part of her act is flash. It's entertainment. It's, there's a lot of a sex appeal to it. But underneath it, she's a hardcore soldier as well. She's a fighter. She's a magic, user that can throw down some serious stuff. And I like the fact that magic has to have this duality. Part of, energized magic is sleight of hand. It's the little subtle game. Get them looking over here, so I do this over here. There's just a little bit of the con that's in place with any good, solid magic act. It's all about the show. It's about what you're going to do, distraction, subversion, and whatnot. And I loved seeing that come through in this title, come through in these character discussions.
One of the things I really liked when that situation went down with the cold flame and they were going after Nick Necro, Constantine goes and acts and saves Nick Necro's life. The funny part is I don't at any point in time think it was that was a really noble move by Constantine. Not saying that I think it was a bad move that he did. He did the right thing. He saved them and all that. But his motivations weren't like sitting here saying, I'm a hero. I can't let that happen. There's that selfish part of him that's going, that's my source of information. If he gets stabbed, I lose that source of information. Now, I do think if it was a little old lady that was going to happen to as well, that had nothing to do with anything, he would have done the same thing. But I like that in this particular situation and scenario, I'm like sitting here saying, that wasn't, that's not John necessarily being noble. That's John looking out for John, and it is an opportunity for John now to get a door open with Nick Necro. And I do think John's an opportunist, which is why are you hard on John Constantine? Because I know he's an opportunist. I do think he would have done it if it was a kid or an old lady or something like that, where you're sitting here saying, well, he wouldn't have ignored that, would he? No, of course not. But I do think if it was a choice between saving Nick Necro to get the information and saving a kid, he would have saved Nick Necro. And that's the distinction, because he's an opportunist. I think he would have felt bad about not saving the kid, and I think he might have tried to do both, but he ultimately would have gone with the guy who has a gateway to the books of magic.
Yeah.
Because that's who Constantine is.
And I'm in complete agreement with you on that statement.
It opened a doorway for him, and then he went with Zatanna and Nick Necro. And Necro's, really big on telling him, hey, listen, you want to hang with us, this is fine, but you got to understand there's real consequences to magic. And they become like this coven. And I loved the tattoo thing, because this is new material. This is not a relationship that was in the past with them on this level. And I like that this is something being established in New 52. It doesn't discount anything we've known about these characters previously, but it's for the purposes of this storyline. It really shows why Zatanna and Constantine became close, as Nick became more driven by the books of magic and this need to find them. He became less connected with those around him. They became kind of the lost sheep. Their leader, their spiritual leader, has kind of abandoned them. And they end up connecting by a mutual sense of a lost friendship, a lost relationship, something that was close to them. It brings them closer together, which is something that very commonly you'll see. So there's a reality to that. And then there's a guilt that they both feel to that, because they both, in their own way, loved Necro for what he brought to them. But he never had that kind of loyalty to them. He dropped them for the books. And that was something that the two of them had trouble dealing with.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool how it all played out, because it felt very real, gritty, honest to what humanity's like. And I mean, there is something to that. This is something that'll happen at times when people get an addiction. They forget those that are close to them. They forget to pay attention to them. They forget. And I like that kind of stuff. I thought that was, comics should show the brightest and best of humanity. They can also point the finger at what's bad about us and where our flaws are, and hopefully make us want to get beyond those flaws ourselves. And I really liked that aspect of this story.
Yeah, I loved when they got caught. When they're in, there was just that great conversation between them. They have that one kiss. And they have kind of like, oh, what did we just do? And Nick shows up, and he's like, completely dismisses her. Constantine's like, hey, man, didn't mean this for happen. He goes, Bull, I saw the look in your eye the moment you first saw her. I thought that, again, another really realistic reaction, because if you think back to when Constantine saw the act, he's like, the act was 40 minutes long. I don't think I blinked once. So there was an immediate boom, that attraction that Constantine had towards Zatanna, which Rightfully so, because she's, look at her. She's sexy. There's going to be that attraction. He's seen her in battle, so he's seen her throw down, so he knows this isn't just a pretty face. This is somebody who's actually can hang. So there's going to be these levels of attraction. There's going to be this stuff. And I love seeing this Necro just on, you talk about the addiction. You talk about him discarding them, throwing them aside. They felt worse about what they did to him than he ever remotely did about getting rid of them. And I think that's part of, again, showing why they're not bad people for what they did, while as he's still a monster.
I love the way that Zatanna's dress sense has been altered in the New 52. In the sense that I feel like it's very contemporary, it's very today. You'd see her on a stage show. I could see people mimicking her after seeing her show. Because the way she dresses both on and off stage it seems like she's got her own style. It's reminiscent of what we've seen before with her. It's kind of a hybrid of what we saw in the past with her in Seven Soldiers and then modern sensibilities. They've done a really great job of making her feel distinctly Zatanna while making it feel very current. And for some reason with that character in particular, it's really drastically important that you do that. If anything, it makes her feel more believable today as being a magician on stage today and now. That she would be somebody people would be... I could see her being on television, as being one of those that people are wowed by because of not just the whole act, the magic act, but her dress sense and the mystique. And I could see women trying to dress like her and stuff like that. I don't know. It's just something about her that the way that she's being handled now, that she feels a lot more trendy to today's television sense. I could see her having a reality show, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I'd watch it. I'd watch it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and I think that would be something where there would be... I think it would work to as a television show. Nick Necro kind of played it off like he didn't care, when the truth of the matter is he did. He was really offended by all this. He felt like at that point they should have been loyal to him and really just gone along with anything that he did. And that was his ego showing through, and we end up seeing it. His rage, where he finally tries to get revenge on Constantine. He wanted to smack it to Zatanna. He wanted to smack it to Constantine. And really, he wanted to condemn John to hell for what happened. Which, okay, were they a little wrong on what they did? Yeah. I think that, there comes a certain point where we've gone a little too far.
Yeah, well, condemn John to hell, turns Zatanna over to her father's greatest enemy.
Right.
So they can do whatever god-awful, unspeakable things to her. Yeah, I think he took it a little bit step too far of the vengeance for the infidelity.
And the fact that Nick got sent there, it's something that's distinctly like your superheroes would make sure that Nick survived. In their case, there was no intention of that happening with Nick. It wasn't a concern. It was more of a, this is just the way that it's going to be for you, Nick. You're going instead. John uses Nick as a human shield. I mean, I love that part. Do you think that end sequence where John and Nick are having that last sort of conversation, I guess you could say, do you think John could have saved him there? Or do you think it was a matter of John wasn't even going to try because he knew if he did? It kind of goes back to the whole Frankenstein thing with Victor Frankenstein. Does John know that, like, if he saved Nick, he'd ultimately come after him again and just is letting that happen? Because that's how I'm taking it. But I don't know. I mean, did you take it as John couldn't save him? Or is that the consequence of magic that Nick was talking about earlier? How did you see all that?
I completely saw it that the thought of, can I save my friend, or this guy who once was my friend and mentor, and not go to hell, never entered John's head. He was in combat. This was Mortal Kombat. One of them was going to die. One of them was going to go to hell, and it wasn't going to be Constantine. I don't think John doesn't think like a hero. Like if it was Zatanna in that circle and Constantine was being made to watch Zatanna go to hell, she would have done something, or she would have tried to do something to make sure neither one of them went to hell. Constantine is like, hey, one of us is going to go. It ain't going to be me. Okay, let me use you as a shield and protect myself. I think that's the difference between Constantine and Zatanna. Zatanna thinks like a hero because she is a hero. Constantine is a person who does good things sometimes, but as you said, he's an opportunistic. He is going to think about, himself. Now, I think if he had to choose between, he would have probably done the same protection for Zatanna. So if Zatanna was in that circle, Constantine would have pulled Nick in path of the dagger to save her, and not giving her a chance to, free both of them from it. But, I think there is some good to John. I'm not saying he's a complete SOB or a complete evil, because he's not. There is some good there. But he doesn't look at the way a traditional quote-unquote hero will look at it. He's going to, hey, one of them had to go. It's not going to be me.
When we get to issue number 13 here, I want to shout out quickly the layout artist, Mikkel Janin. It's Janin. And Victor, it's Drujiniu, and Ulysses Areola. I know I'm probably butchering that, colorist. And Ryan Sook on the covers. I really loved the look of these issues. I thought everything from the pencils to the color work, it was uniquely Justice League Dark. It looks very different than any, Justice League title would look like. And that's something to me that there's a certain distinction. It's a darker edge. It's more of a fantasy world, magic. And, you're seeing Black Boris in this issue. You're seeing the giant tree, Blackbriar Thorn, I think is, if I'm getting it correctly, was attacking. Besides that, we've got Faust, we've got Nick Necro, Dr. Mist, who used to be on their side. Now he's flipped to the other side to save his wife. And those motivations, like you're sitting here saying, well, I can see why Mist would do what he's doing. I don't know that I don't agree with him. I don't condone what he's doing, but yet I understand the motivation. Those kind of gray areas are something that I find very interesting in a comic book story. This is very cool because with it being called Justice League Dark, it's not a clean world. And even the team itself, our heroes that we're following, the relationships aren't clean. And that makes it interesting. It's a unique team that you don't see in any of the other titles. Very different than, like, you look at a Suicide Squad, which is an all-villain team. Their makeup and their motivations are very drastically different than this team would be. This team's very different than Earth 2's group would be, or the Birds of Prey. These are very different motivating factors. And I think when you're doing a different team book, you got to say what makes this team book special. Like, why are people going to pick this one up if they're already picking up 3 other team books, 4 other team books, 5 other team books, whatever? What is it that makes this one the one they're going to go, I've got to keep this one because it's different? And this book is filled with that because of this magical world. I was a big fan of the books of magic, all the way back from Neil Gaiman writing it, straight on through to the various iterations of the series with Timothy Hunter. To have Timothy Hunter brought into the DC universe and used in this book in this way was for me a real geek out. We get some real revelations here on the nature of the books of magic in the current DC universe, why Tim was needed, and it sets up a really cool mystery about the nature of magic in the DC universe, which is something I think you need to explore because it's a different power set in this universe. That I love that they're giving it this sense of high value, clearly from where this storyline goes down the road.
Oh, God, yeah. And I tell you, it's with jumping back into the overarching story of Justice League Dark it was a neat, just boom, okay, we're back into the action. Opens up the issues right back into the middle of the 2 different teams, the 2 different big fights going on. And I was glad to see how they broke down, an artistic stylex where it was the non-traditional panels. You get that grit, you let your art teams tell a story, but you still have your background, your inner dialogue, your verbal dialogue. You still get this, but we got these great artistic pages. And this was, again, another one of those stories where on my second read through, I found myself just stopping, going, oh, this is some cool stuff. And you got your fire troll on one page, your wood entity, wood spirit, whatever you want to call the guy, on the other page. 2 completely different power sets, 2 different art appearances, but it's still conforming within that same kind of art style to them. It still had that same feel. Dramatic differences going on, but I never was jarred going from one page to the next page to the next page. It had this great flow through because both of them had this mystic supernatural stuff to it. And again, it was some really cool stuff of just, stories being told, different fight styles, different stylings behind them. And I was like, wow, this is something that, this was high action. It was a neat, cool, fun story that I was like, this is a great universe. I want more magic. I want to know who that Tim Hunter kid is. I want to learn about him because I had no idea who this kid was, no idea anything of the previous books of magic or the previous stories. And now that I heard that you said it was Gaiman, I'm like, oh, now I definitely got to read it. I definitely got to see who this kid is.
Yeah, Timothy Hunter and the Books of Magic was something that I've always really, really enjoyed. That was something I was very big into, the whole Vertigo thing when that was going on. I was reading Sandman, and then from that, Sandman was really kind of my gateway into Vertigo and the direction it was going in. So I started picking up a number of Vertigo titles, including work, with Garth Ennis when it started popping up. Books of Magic was something that I really, really enjoyed. Black Orchid, who's actually in this, had like a mini series that was going on or was it? I don't remember if it was a series or a mini series. I remember reading a number of issues on a limited budget. I was like making decisions to pick, certain Vertigo books up and try them out, and I was really enjoying a lot of what I was reading through the line. I wasn't able to get the whole Vertigo line, but I'd grab mini series. Like Garth Ennis did this really cool mini series called Goddess that I really enjoyed. But the Books of Magic was a series I remember consistently really enjoying the story development of this kid, Timothy Hunter, who was thrust into this world of the Books of Magic. And, he would journey all over the place in those. So it's great to see what you're seeing here with him is very much a great introduction into who he is. It is a lot of very representative of how I see Tim. I'm hoping that he's somebody we will see more in the DC universe. I'm guessing that he's going to factor heavily into where the end of this storyline was kind of hinting.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Which with what Pandora and Phantom Stranger, I guess we might as well, instead of I don't know why I'm dancing around. It's not like we're not going to talk about it. Which then would also be the question, right? It'd be all three of them.
Yeah.
Is that the war they're talking about, the War of the Three?
The Trinity War.
Right. I can't wait to see how that's going to play out because... Look, talk about a storyline that they've teased without, overdoing it.
Yeah.
I'm anticipating that, and I feel like I don't quite know enough yet, and that's cool. There's something about that I'm finding with all of the stuff going on in the DC Universe right now. I don't need more than I've got with that. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, they're just... It's funny because they are really doing big story on top of big story on top of big story. And they're doing that with all the different titles. It's, you look at what's going on in the Green universe where we have, one after another after, you get done with Sinestro Corps War, you get the Color War, you get the Blackest Night, you got the Third Army, the Rise of the Third Army, Fight of the Third Army, you got all that going on. You got Superman where they, started now with the Hell on Earth and everything going there. You got the Bats, went through Court of Owls, now he's dealing with the Joker and who knows what's going to happen afterwards. You got your Rot World stories going on. Now you got your Justice League Dark where you've got your Books of Magic and now going into the Trinity War, where that's going to go. They keep building one story after another, and I'm so glad that we're getting boom, boom, boom. We're getting these hammers that are getting dropped. It makes things exciting. It makes things fun. They feel like events inside the title. It's not just a storyline being told. It has some significance, some importance, some muscle backing it.
As we're going through and seeing Dead Man, I'm laughing at this whole Dead Man sequence with Blackbriar Thorn because I think one of the cool parts about Dead Man is he doesn't feel like a rebooted character in the sense that, this is his first time doing this. He's been at this for a while. And that's one of the key things I think that they made good choices as far as which characters seem like they're at the ground floor and which characters seem like they've been around for a while. Dead Man's weaving his way through these roots, and I thought that the panels where they showed him as an acrobat kind of zipping his way through all that and finally finding the man behind Blackbriar Thorn and bringing him out, much to Zatanna's surprise on the outside where she's holding her own.
Yeah.
I thought there was something that was really cool about that. I also love that Dead Man, in this world and in this team, he is kind of the superhero that's on the team. Like, I do look at Deadman as kind of a superhero, traditional superhero kind of, because he's had so much interaction with the regular superheroes. So there's certain elements of this where he loses patience. And he'll make cracks about the Englishman and stuff like that through it. And there's something about that I really like, because he gets annoyed a lot of times where he's being held up in certain situations where he feels like he could do more. And he isn't able to. Like, I loved that Nick Necro knew how to stop him.
Yeah.
And that Nick Necro could have used him to manipulate Zatanna, but that didn't fit how Necro wants to stick it to them. And that was something that was really neat that was explained there, versus us being left going, well, Necro could have just used Deadman. No, Necro said, yes, I could have just used Deadman, but I'm not going to, because I'm going to do this. There was something about all of that I really liked, and Deadman's reactions to all of it, in many ways was kind of like, I think, our voice into this whole scenario. Because he's saying all the things that we would be saying in this situation, and I love that.
Oh, God, yeah. And Deadman, again, he's a character that I'm so glad is on this team because of, everything you said about where he's got another one of those very hero feels to him. You can see he's there for the good, not just, he's not the opportunistic. He's there to fight the fight. He's there to help the world and save the universe and whatnot, and make sure the bad guys don't get the books of power or books of magic. He's making sure that, the good guys win in the end. That's his goal behind this. And it's actually neat to see him and Zatanna teaming up, because they are very similar personalities. They have that similar drive, that similar goal, and that similar pursuit. So it's the fact that it was Deadman right there when Nick Necro shows up. The fact that he was the one that gets immobilized. You can kind of feel his pain and understand what he's going through. And you're like, oh, God. You can't do anything. He's got you stuck. It's magic powers. It's, you feel bad for the guy because you know what's going on through him. You know he's one of the good guys. He would want to, lash out, and fight the fight.
I want, they got the House of Secrets, the House of Mystery. I want the House of Fun. And it would be like a traditional carnival fun house. But the main reason why I want it is I want to be able to travel from place to place in a house. And just because traffic, I don't know about you, traffic annoys me anymore. And these guys do not have traffic problems. And I'm getting the sense with them that they're not bound by, normal laws of time. So my work drive's about 35 minutes, which isn't, anything to complain about by any stretch. But I would imagine I'd be there pretty instantaneously, right?
Yeah.
Which means I could probably get a lot of stuff done on that road trip. Because, there would be no time at all. We have all this traditional funhouse stuff, like the mirrors that make you different sizes and shapes and stuff like that. And that might be something that, like somebody could come in and they're really tiny, but then we could put them in front of a certain mirror and then they'd be huge, and I could throw them outside and say, go fight now. Those types of things. And then, people who are having, problems getting along, I put them in the cave of love, and by the time they're done, they're, friends again. So it'd be this would be the whole thing that I have with it. So I want to have the third house and be driving it around. So that's kind of where I'd like to be at after all this.
Well, you want the fourth house.
What would be the...
There is already a third house.
There's the House of Secrets, the House of Mystery. What's the third
The House of Whatnot.
Oh. No, I clearly don't want that.
I'm still trying to figure out how to fly this thing, but I'm working on it. The other day I felt some rumbling, so I'm thinking, it's starting to, fall off its foundation. Now, hopefully that's not it collapsing in on itself, but I'm thinking, eventually someday you're going to see this house flying through the sky and
crashing into a bridge.
I'll avoid bridges. No more bridges if I'm flying through the sky.
That'll be the House of Whatnot's kryptonite. Turns around and comes back.
Dang it.
I loved the house's concept here.
Yeah.
Nick Necro realizing that, okay, the House of Mystery is a major feather in Constantine's hat, and I need something equally powerful in order to be able to get from place to place. So that way, I get where I need to be before Constantine does. I've got the map. This is a race against time. I've got to get there first. It's about obtaining the books before Timothy Hunter. And hopefully having all the players in place so then we can be done with Timothy Hunter. I can take control of all this. It's about getting this holy grail of magic and understanding it and becoming the most powerful around. That motivation of power is something that I do think there is a human nature to that. It's something that I'm glad I don't have this need for that. I think we all have it to different levels. I'm not saying that I don't. I think everybody wants to have a certain amount of authority to them. But, like I've known a lot of people in my life who will go out of their way to step on other people to even have this illusion of authority. And it's something that I just don't comprehend, because I think those are people who generally are not trusted by others. And I think deep down they know they're not trusted by others because of it, and yet they embrace it. And I guess that's the part that I can't fathom, because I would rather have people trust me than look at me as this demagogue, because I think it's because I've been fortunate enough to have good friends that I have trusting relationships with, that those values and that loyalty is more important to me than power. Not to say that I don't like it. We all like authority, and I have that bone in me too. I'm not saying that I don't. So I'm not trying to say that I'm some kind of morally enlightened that way. I do think we all like a certain sense of power, and but if it was a choice between the two, I do know that I would side towards trust and friendship over power.
Yeah, see, you get some people with just the basic humanity, the basic human nature motivation, with that pursuit of power, the pursuit of thing. Some people do it because of I was weak once, I'll never be weak again. You get some who do it, just because they're evil SOBs, and they don't care about other people. They only want themselves. And you get that weird third crop, that is like looking for the greater good behind the power. Whereas if somebody else who shouldn't have this has it, it won't be as good. I'll do the right thing by it. And in the book, we kind of see that evil, those different levels of evil in the bad guy team. You got Mist, who's doing these nasty, evil things to save his wife or to bring back his wife. You got, Faust, who's doing it because, hey, I honestly believe Faust, he's evil and he's a bad guy, but he's doing it more so to, I'm never going to be as weak as I was. I always want more power for power. And then you got Necro, who's doing it because he's evil. He's done the full-on turn to pure evil. Before he was a junkie, before he was an addict looking for a fix in the book of magic, now he's crossed over that line and he is that pure-on evil. And I like seeing those different team members where, with Mist, you could probably do something and rehabilitate him. Faust, yeah, he's over the line too much already, but you kind of understand where he's coming from, and that's how you're able to take him down. Necro, you just gotta. He's one of those things where it's reason they invented capital punishment. Let's get rid of this source of evil that isn't going to be rehabilitated, that isn't going to make a comeback. He's a lost cause. Get rid of him. Done.
As this whole battle's going on, we see the different layers where we see like Madame Xanadu trying to protect Timothy Hunter, but then Cold Flame showing up and Faust, and this whole idea of let's kill Timothy Hunter. Let's make sure that he is out of the way, so that way we don't have that it's not an avatar, but this kind of magic being who is the source of opening the books of magic. Now I can take over that role. And this unholy alliance coming from the fact that after Necro disappeared, we had Faust who said, imagine doing this, giving up your soul for magic, for the power. That's something where you're giving up it goes back to what I was saying earlier. I couldn't give up my soul for anything.
Right.
It's there's no amount of power that would make it worth being that person that I've got to get this book. So now I'm going to be this all-powerful, but I'm ultimately damning myself because of that. And Faust did that. That's that kind of thing that Constantine was talking about earlier. We saw Necro slip more and more, and I think you saw him slip more and more into the same category that Faust was in. Necro is a lot like Faust, that he was willing to give up any part of himself and anybody associated with him in order to get that power. And that thirst for it is, I think your dictators of the world, have that kind of sense of and need of power that they, are willing to throw aside friendships, and you can never truly be a friend with that person because, based on their power, they may need to take you down.
Yeah.
And that would be something where you would always have a tentative relationship there. So I think this fits, a lot of what we see in the world. And there are people who are obsessed with power to that level. I don't know, it was something that I really enjoyed about this sequence because you're seeing things that you can connect with the real world, things that you hopefully learn for, and you say, hey, I don't ever want to sacrifice a friendship for some silly sense of a little bit more power at work or a little bit more power in my personal life or something like that. I think we can all learn from this type of thing and not be that guy, I hope, because it really would distance yourself from having any meaningful relationships. Because you can tell, even from when he shows up there, Zatanna's reaction to him all the way through is one of shock, horror, emotional distress, because this was somebody who she did love at one point. And no longer does because of the fact that she knows how far he has gone. But there is that part of her that's still torn because she was once in that place. Even Constantine has those moments because this was somebody who was a mentor, a sensei to him. And there is a loving relationship because of that, of respect that he originally had for him as being that person who can help him move forward. And there's got to be that part of Constantine going, how do I prevent myself from becoming a Nick Necro? Because Xanadu even alludes to the fact that she saw a vision where Constantine could become that. So there's that thing going on and twist going on in this world, how close Constantine is to Necro. And that's something that's really deep in this story that I'm enjoying as well, that all of these characters are a little bit different. The paths that this could go on, depending on who gets a hold of the power of the books of magic, could be very, very dark as it goes on. And are we still going to see that? Because with Constantine having to continue to pursue this as it goes on in the storyline, how do we know that we're not going to eventually see Constantine get the books of magic?
Well, yeah, it's one of the things that I thought was kind of neat in seeing this battle between Nick and John. When the initial battle that we get here, you see the shock and surprise on both John and Zatanna's face when they see Nick. But again, it is, she's more of, she looks at it more as the hero side. She looks at more of you can kind of see and feel the sympathy in her voice. With John, he's like, hey, you know what? You're just a bloke who got his heart broke by a pretty girl. There is a little bit of there is shock, there is surprise, but there is a little bit of coldness on his side directing towards Nick. And there is in their fighting where they're throwing down, he's like, hey, yeah, you taught me. I learned from you, but you didn't teach me everything. I learned a couple tricks of my own. And there is that both of them are trying to stand tall. And you do see Nick has more power. Nick does, and from the beginning has always had more strength, more fire, more mystical energy to him than John does. And I like seeing the fact that Constantine really did get thrown around. And throughout the entire fighting, anytime these two are going down, Nick does have the upper hand on John because he's got more of the knowledge base, he's got more of the power base to pull from and the energy to pull from. And I was glad to see that they didn't throw that away. They kept it, true to it. And the battles were very fascinating for me, seeing these two forces. Both of them Constantine could very easily have become a Nick. And for some reason, he didn't cross over. He didn't, become blindly pursuant of the books as Necro did, which ends up being Necro's downfall. And I love seeing just the path that John could have gone.
I like seeing the chase scene between the two houses and seeing that, that causes strain for Constantine, especially after his battle. And that Nick Necro is aware that this is coming, puts the house in a position where it's going to be crushed and destroyed. I'm like, oh my gosh, did they just destroy the House of Mystery? And I guess there was that part of me that knew that no, that wasn't what was going to happen, but it was still something jarring seeing all that happen. I liked seeing that Nick Necro got this perverse pleasure out of the power of bringing Zatanna with him. Yeah. I don't, it's not because he still loves her or anything like that. It's more of he's bringing her because he can force her into that position. He can force her to choose. And that goes back to his thirst for power. And it adds a creep factor to him. It makes you want to see him get smacked down out of all this because he put her in that place.
Well, it's also a nice knife in the side of Constantine.
Of course.
A nice way to hurt Constantine. And you see him, just the pleasure he gets. And again, it was a cool moment between John and Zatanna about where she gives him that farewell kiss. And she's like, hey, no matter what happens, he doesn't get the books. You know, and she even, he, I guess, there was like a spark of hero in him where he would possibly sacrifice, the books to save Zatanna, or maybe she thought he might let that notion enter her head, and she's like, hey, don't start growing a conscience on me now. There's a reason she's trusting Constantine. She knows that if the choice is between saving Zatanna and stopping Necro from getting the books, he will go with stopping Necro to get the book from getting the books. He will sacrifice Zatanna to stop that from happening, and that's what she's asking him to do. And he probably would feel guilty about doing it afterwards. But of everyone on on this team, Constantine would do that. He would allow it to happen to prevent Necro from getting those books. And I like that moment of this that one kind of those couple panels between the two of them where she's saying that. Again, another true hero moment saying, hey, I will sacrifice myself to make sure this evil guy does not get these books, because who knows what he will do to the universe.
I agree that he would do that, but I also think he would be haunted by it.
Yeah.
Like, it would be a choice that he would make. I'm a big fan of Stephen King's Dark Tower book series and the comics, too. But I read the books beforehand. And he is faced, Roland, the character in that, is faced with that with Susan Delgado. He's faced with choosing between his quest for the Dark Tower and Susan Delgado. And he's also does that with a boy named Jake, where he's forced to make the choice of his quest versus saving them. And he was haunted by both events afterwards because he had to make that hard choice. And it changes him as the path goes on. And I connect that story with Constantine because I do think he's one of those guys. I don't think Constantine's a bad guy. That's one of the things I like about him. There's good in him, and you can see it. And you see that things bother him and that he is haunted by things and choices. I agree with everything you said. He would have made the choice exactly that you said he would have made. But the one thing I think that it's not where I forgive him, but it's where I find myself not hating him. It's where I find myself rallying for him. I rally for him to make the good choices because I see that good in him when I see him haunted by things. You know, if that makes sense? It's like, yeah, I want to see more of that guy. Be haunted more by this stuff and learn from it, you numbskull. And I think that's where a Constantine works as a character. He's that friend that you want to smack upside the head and go, I know you're good in there. Use it more. Let that be your driving force. And it's so often not for him. But he is the guy that will also surprise you when you think that he's only going to give you some information and not help at all. He will sometimes find the motivation in himself to help out in something where he'll come in and save the day and you didn't expect it. And he's that kind of guy too. Yeah. Where you're kind of like, remember he was there for us that time when he did this? There's that guy in there too. That's why I think people will give him a pass from time to time. It's why Zatanna will still kiss him. It's why, those moments where you see that part of him where he will surprise you and you know that there's that guy in there as well. He's complicated. I love that because, a lot of times comic books, for people who haven't read them, kind of get thrown under the bus as being funny books. There's nothing wrong with that. I love humor books, and I think to me, actually, the funny book concept in comics is sheer utter brilliance too. The ones that are considered simplistic funny books, I think people need to read them and realize how hard it is to pull off that kind of humor. I don't think there's anything simplistic or throwaway by any comic book that's been created. I think people try to step up the game with that. But then you see something like this Constantine stuff is stuff that's validation for those people. Say, how can you look at this character and tell me a comic book is simplistic? You can't. This guy is so multifaceted and so many layers of issues. Like, really, he should have a psych eval constantly for everything he's going through. But I do want to say that, too, the funny books thing, it's always a comment that if anything, I think we should embrace the funny book concept and pat people on the back who do great funny books. Because I think anybody who tries to downplay any form of comic, I think humor is a very hard thing to do, to pull off and pull it off well. and consistently and keep people chuckling and keep it fresh and exciting. And
Oh God, yeah.
my respect level for the medium, I don't think there's any comic that you should be poo-pooing. If it's not your cup of tea, move along. But this medium does not need anybody bashing it under any sense, because there's great quality from the people who do that. Because I look at books like Superman Family Adventures. I think the humor that they pull off in that every month, I don't know how they keep me chuckling as much as they do.
Yeah.
They did the same thing in Tiny Titans, and you could, for people looking at that, if you think of that as just a kid's book, that that has, I think, the same quality of depth that this does. It's just presented differently. It's got a different tone. And that's one of the things that I love about comics, is that you can go anywhere with it. And Constantine's one of those characters. Woohoo, see dark. Do you want to talk about this annual?
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah.
Because that's our first introduction really to Frankenstein being a sort of member of the team.
He's Frank. He's going to be on the team. He's not going to be on the team. It's right now, he's needed on the team. They need him, and he needs to be there, so he's on the team. And we'll see later on in 14, he sticks around just because he's still kind of needed there. He's not exactly sure what his role is going to be, and maybe he's done there, but for right now, he's still needed. It's that Frank morality that he has, where he's like, the job isn't completely done yet. Yeah, what you brought me on for, that disaster is averted, but I'm still needed here. And I like just how he comes into this play. The house of mystery is quote unquote destroyed. They're stranded in the middle of nowhere, and the bad guy's about to go get the books of magic. Out of nowhere, Frankenstein and Shade swoop in, and I thought that was a cool way to bring him in and a cool way to start this issue off.
I really liked this book's use of editor's notes, and I'm really appreciating that. I'm seeing them creep up more and more. Like they did an editor's note later when Nick was talking about Cold Flame, and just when they're doing the kind of like the quick run through of a reminder of what's going on in the story and kind of linking everything together chronologically, so we know what it looked like from Nick's standpoint. And I really liked when they did that, because for me as a reader, I'm reading it every month. I'm really enjoying this book. I'm reading a lot of titles. It pulled me back into all the elements of the story from a different perspective, so it's fresh, because it's coming from Nick's side now, but it reminded me of everything that happened, and gives me a nice little editor's note just reminding me of something that was, who this Cold Flame group is in the story. I love that kind of stuff, and I think that, that's, you want to be judicious on it, because you don't want your whole story littered with editor's notes, but you also want to sit there and say, okay, this is a concept that's essential to the story. They're not in every single moment of the issue, so let's just remind you that this is what they are. It's the annual. And if you collected all the annuals and maybe didn't pick up a single, those single issues, you might need to know this anyway. But for me, as an ongoing reader of the series, I really liked the fact that this annual took some time to tell us everything from Nick's perspective, gave me a great refresher on everything that I'd already read, and got to see it from a different angle. And it was something I thought really stood out. I also loved the choice of having the regular art team not do the Zero issue, but having them focus on the annual. Because I thought the Zero issue was a great time to have a different art team who I thought did a fantastic job on the Zero issue, but really saving the main team for this heavy conclusion to this storyline, because I wanted this art on the conclusion, because I've been enjoying it so much leading up to it.
Oh, definitely. Again, it's another, blending, another, just that continuation of what I'm getting. It fit for the Zero issue because that was a flashback. It was an origin story. There was, it didn't have to have the exact same look, but it had to have the same feel, which it did. Now we're continuing the story. Let's have the same look and feel to it. And this was just a great, again, throughout all these issues, if I'm not saying it enough, I'm going to say it again. I'm loving this art style for these titles. This right here fits this whole magic universe. This fits this genre. It fits this style. It fits these characters. I'm loving what I'm seeing. I'm loving what I'm reading. This is Justice League Dark has been a wonderful story, as well as visually very, very pleasing for me. And all of these titles that we've covered, that Swamp Thing, Animal Man, Justice League Dark, Frank, all of them had a very common feel for me that the art style fit that story that I was reading. It was a definite strong gelling of the team, and it was something that I was deeply and truly enjoying. So, let me throw that one more time out there. If you couldn't tell, I'm liking the artwork.
I'm a fan of books like Athena Voltaire, Indiana Jones, obviously all that kind of stuff. Games like Tomb Raider, Uncharted. When you go into tombs and those kind of quests and things, I've always enjoyed that kind of pulpy storytelling. When you get that thrown into this, it fits in a magic book like this. And the idea of Mordru from, Demon Knights being a part of this, and we're seeing his skeleton there holding the map, knowing that Mordru could be resurrected at any point in time anyway because he's another magic person. But the idea that Nick shows up and we see Mordru's skeleton, that's a great use of DC lore that we're reading in other books being brought in. Good Easter eggs, makes you feel part of the same universe, good choice of direction there. I really liked that. I loved the visual of the whole thing. I really want to question who buried Mordru in that position, because he's like squatting down with his hands underneath his legs. I love it, though, because I'm sitting here, I'm like, it's so eccentric and weird that it fits a magic guy. So it's not a negative, it's not a knock. I was just looking at it like, oh my gosh, what a weird position to be buried in.
You want to know, I'll be honest, I'll give you an honest answer.
Uh-huh.
I don't think he was buried that way. I think he was sitting there holding that, trying to figure out a way to get past the security locks. That was him in meditation, contemplation, and whatnot as he's trying to break down the barriers, because he had the cube, but Merlin had the key. So they kept it separate. So he was trying to get past the security, and either there was major feedback that fried him, or he just died and withered, and that's how he ended up his final resting or whatnot. I don't know. But that, when I read this, that's the first thought that popped in my head, was he was trying to get past the locks and died in the process.
So his battle in death was like his last moments were trying to get that open.
Right.
Okay, I like that. I really like that a lot. I still don't know why he sat that way, but
well, you look at how
I'm kidding, dude. I'm so kidding. That
well,
like,
no, I'm gonna say I'm gonna continue on with the art style, because you look at how Nick is sitting there once he has it. He's sitting there meditating and trying to focus on it, doing his magic. It's a very similar position,
right?
So I could see that as a meditational type state.
That's why I said I'm kidding, because I agree with you on the meditation part. I really didn't need validation of that. I was joking.
I'm going to keep fighting for it, man.
Yeah,
I like my theory.
It's a good theory. It's fine. You win.
Hey, wait, hold on. What was that? Did you just say I won? I don't think you have. You ever said that in 6 years?
Sure, I have. You just I edit it out every time. Nobody else has heard it.
Oh, there's another edit from them.
Yeah, I mean, I give you your little moments here or there. It just keeps you coming back for more.
I'm just happy.
Yeah. Nobody else is going to hear that, though.
Okay. It will get edited out, so.
That's right. Dude, you're edited out of half the episode anyway, so it's like,
And there are probably people out there right now saying, why don't you edit them out the other half?
One of the things that I loved was Zatanna. Everything she's seen from Nick Necro, she's still shocked when Nick is willing to kill Tim Hunter.
Yeah.
He's just a kid, comes up from her, and that's something that I liked her shock and awe, because this is somebody who she did love at some point. So for her to believe now this person would go to that level really is something that, like, are you really that far gone that you would do this to a child? And Nick is so in that place. There's no innocence here. This is war. And that justification, immediate justification, and, we saw the stuff I was talking about earlier with Faust and how far people would go. I also like this idea that he leads into this, that to tell you how far I manipulated things, I put your team together. The team that's not a team.
Yeah.
I manipulated things so you people would have to come together, really to position you and Constantine in place so you would be where I needed you to be, doing some of my work for me, which is always a horrifying thing to find out as a group, that the villains put you together. And, like, now you're trying to stand against the villain, but he was actually the one that put you in that place. So how much confidence does that give you that you're going to be able to overcome him when he wanted this? That's great. I love that stuff.
The one of the things that kind of cracked me up with Faust selling his soul to get Nick free just to go after the books, knowing that there was knowledge that, that Nick had, that he would never be able to get. It was, knowledge in his head. One of the things that cracked me up is just, I was always thinking, okay, instead of selling your soul, dude, couldn't you just retrace the steps? Couldn't you do your own detective work, or is it about did he want the easy way out? Did he want to get the knowledge without the work, or by the fact that he sold his soul, that is the work for the knowledge?
I'll defend him there.
The price of magic.
I'll defend him there. First of all, Necro wouldn't have left a journal with his journey because Necro wouldn't have wanted anyone able to follow his steps.
Okay.
So he obviously was covering his tracks along the way because he would know other people are questing for the books. Think about how long the books have been hidden. So Necro was really doing, because of his obsession and how far he'd gone with it, was doing things that hadn't been done before. And in his mind, recognizing any steps that he retraced, other people were already going to be retracing. It was the things that he was discovering that other people didn't, that he masked every one of those paths so well that the only way to really find out what his path was to retrace it, which is what Faust wanted to do, was to go to Necro himself. So Faust's really only real concrete source of information about Necro's path would have been Necro. Because why would Necro have left a trail of breadcrumbs for any magic being to follow that was in the DC universe, including Faust, because obviously Faust wanted to follow it. So he would have been following Necro, right?
Yeah, I'm liking your answers. I like this. Okay, yeah. I'm no longer going to laugh at Faust for what he did. Well, I'm going to laugh at him for what he did because of the blind pursuit of the power was kind of stupid of him, what he was willing to do. But why he did it, I understand that. That's pretty good. It's okay.
I like the bit with Frankenstein where it's establishing his tentative relationship with Shade. Because I'm assuming out of the whole Rot World thing, Shade is going to be back. Obviously because everybody else is still alive now. But it's establishing a point where Frank could possibly stay with this team, could find something more useful for himself to do as an asset, as a part of this group, assisting them. More, maybe he'll find this is more to his nobility than other things that he's been doing. I'm hoping that this is establishing a gateway for Frank to be here.
I hope so, because I really want Frank on this team.
Right. And I can see why they would want him as members. And we see that vision that I was talking about earlier. I'm going to kind of gloss through that really quick because, we already covered a lot of this material. But one of the things that I really like about the relationship between Necro and Faust and really all of his allies is it's really clear that Necro is with them for convenience. The way that he reacts to Faust, the way that he treats him and all this, really just hammers home that idea that you're here because I need you here now. That does not need to stay that way, nor is it necessarily going to stay that way. I don't know that these guys, like when they get the books, I think they would go out of their way to kill each other.
Oh, big time.
To get the books. I don't know that Mist is motivated the same way that those two are, but I think that would also be where Mist would die.
I think Mist would be one of the first ones to fire because he doesn't want... He's willing to do some, horrific things and be a part of horrific things so he can, save his wife. But he also knows that these two are going to double cross him. He's not blindly thinking, hey, we're all a team here. He knows they're going to double cross him. So I think Mist would have been one of the first ones to fire and one of the first ones to kind of go after the books. Once all the good guys were removed, he would have probably been one of the first ones to fight.
I agree. I take it back, actually. I think in that case, Mist would also... Yeah. I don't know. I wonder if there isn't already a plan to take out Mist in place with Faust and Necro. Probably knowing just what you're saying. They have to know they can't trust him, right?
Yeah, well, they don't trust anybody. But here's my thought on that.
It's kind of like it's the Joker in Dark Knight, his whole scenario where everybody was killing everybody else. I see that happening with this group when they win.
Yeah, but I think they would underestimate Mist, not magically or powerfully, but they would think this guy, if I'm Nick Necro and I'm thinking, okay, who's going to double cross me first, Mist or Faust? Faust is going to be the first one you're going to go after. That's the first one you're going to want to take out. And same thing with Faust looking at Mist and Necro. He's going to want to, so those two are going to fire at each other first. If Mist picks one of those two, fires along with it, we're looking at he's in a good spot. He'll be on number 2 spot. Then it's Mist versus either Necro or Faust. That's my thought on what Mist is thinking right now.
I hadn't read this when we had done our Sword of Sorcery discussion. It's great to see Amethyst here. I love that the Sword of Sorcery Zero issue led to this, and we see this character a part of this group, because I think this is one of those books that I think how it's going to work well is that I think you need to have a core group that constantly appear. But I think you also need to have characters like Amethyst, who kind of and our vampire, that can rotate in and out of the group based on missions, like you mentioned earlier, because there's a lot of magic characters. And I think there's an opportunity to bring in some classic magic characters as well. That'd be fun to see in this title. I want to see the background story between Constantine and Zatanna with how their relationship ultimately ended. You know, I want to see the whole story on what happened.
Was the final story? Now, I'm wondering...
With the dad?
Yeah, something with the dad.
Well, the dad's dead. I think the dad's dead due to Constantine, due to a magic thing gone wrong. I think Zatara's death was because of Constantine making a choice.
Okay, yeah, that could end a relationship right there.
Yeah, I'm guessing. Now, it doesn't seem like, though, that Constantine was put in a position where it was A or B with Dad. I think it was the ritual they were doing that killed Dad. And I think because of that, so I don't think it was as simple as, like, Constantine pulled the trigger. I don't look at it that way. It's not that simple. But I think it was an issue where you're in a ritual together where Dad dies. How can you have a relationship with that person? You know, I think that's going to be an interesting thing to see. Do these two find their way back to each other after all that, with how this storyline's unfolding? I'm kind of rooting for them in a weird way.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to see, because I think she brings out the good in him.
I think so too.
But again, I kind of like him as a jerk, so it's a tough call because I wouldn't want a kinder, gentler version of Constantine.
I think the relationship's doomed to end horribly.
Oh yeah,
I think they'll get back to. I think I see them getting potentially back together again, and him being the guy she can't resist, her being the girl he can't resist for obvious reasons. Her trying to appeal to that side of him where she's trying to save him. And I get that, because I think she's a strong enough person to make a positive impact on him, but I think he's ultimately going to be the one that does something to screw it up. And that's, we all want to watch a train wreck, right?
Yeah. I think that's a really good description of what's going to happen.
Yeah. And then, afterwards kind of go, what were you thinking, Z? But yet I understand it. So I think there's a cool part to that as well. I don't know. I really like the way the story path is going.
Yeah. The cool part, one of the cool parts in this issue for me, and we talked about it when we talked about Frank, but it was the conversation between Frank and Amethyst.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I really do. And I'm looking at it right now again, and she's like, you can see she's not sure what she's going to be able to do for the team. And he's like, we fight evildoers who wish to destroy humanity. Doing your best is all we can ask, milady. That right there was just a great Frank moment.
Yeah, and that's, you see again that nobility with him. Yeah. And I love how to me a good team book should always, if a character's being used there, should always forward the storyline of that character as well. And I think that's a part where editorials really got to work well with the solo series and with the current series, where we feel like we're getting some actual story progression with the character. And I felt like that really happened here. And also him realizing there was more to her than she even knows about herself. Because this is still a very green Amethyst. She doesn't know, and anybody who understands green is Frank. But she's one that hasn't really had a lot of time in her role, and I love that. I know, it was horrid.
That was awful, but you know what?
It was purposely awful, though. I love when the team walks out together. Get your game faces on, kids. It's time to save the world. Because it's such an eclectic-looking group, yet there's something powerful about them. And Tim Hunter's in front of the charge. He's recharged now magically because of Constantine's move. They're realizing what's at stake. Just the armed forces that are against them. Every one of them is needed. And I love, have at them, rend them limb from evil limb. No evil shall stand at the end of this unholy day. I like this guy. What a great moment. I just loved that. It was a great visual seeing them all flying down together like that. This reminds me, in the Shadow Pact reference that I made, is out of love for that series. I thought Shadowpact was really an underrated series. I really enjoyed the concept behind it. Calling this Justice League Dark was a great idea because I'm hoping the Justice League name on it and that branding has brought people to it who haven't read it before. I think the team mix of this is really fantastic. These are characters that all feel like they're current in the DC universe. They belong. They feel very today. And I like the idea that it doesn't feel at all like a traditional team. And that's something that's important to me because I feel glad that I'm reading this and I feel like it's not like any other title. It's cool.
Yeah. And again, really neat fighting team-ups here with Frank and Amethyst throwing down with the Fire Troll. You know, I love just seeing these two together. These two working together on the same team was just a great. You know, it made sense that she's sticking by his side. He was the guy who stood up and said, "Hey, don't worry, we got each other's back." And it was that Frank moment where you see the monster, but you immediately know, okay, this isn't just some monster. This is a man of honor and a man of integrity. Okay, and they're fighting side by side. I love that moment. That was just, it was, you know, and again, you know, seeing Frank kick some serious butt is always fun.
I love with our vampire friend. There is a difference between her and his reaction to, like, Andrew doesn't really care about killing or not in that scenario. And he really feels that, like, Blackbriar Thorn, no amount of pleading and teaming up is going to make this guy somebody you can trust. So he just kills him.
Yeah. Well, she's like, "Don't make me do this." And he's like, "I'm not buying it." Thorn stabs him in the face.
Yeah, but then there's that idea, I don't think, he's wood. I don't think you can kill him. He'll eventually regenerate, but this will at least keep him out of the game for now so we can continue fighting on and be of use elsewhere. And that was a good strategy in the whole story. But I don't know that Bennett... See, the thing is, Bennett doesn't really know that. That could have killed him.
Well, but yeah, it's, again, another question about Bennett. Is he just trying to make her feel better and not feel bad? Because, he is a bit of the darker side. Yeah, he is a bit evil, and he is a bit, he's that gray character of, depending on, he's a killer. But is he completely a heartless killer that he's going to see that this little girl is upset, or is he going to throw her a bone and say, "Oh, no, I'm sure she's probably not dead"? It's a question of, I don't know where he's at on this one, because we've seen some stuff with him in his series where he would try to make her feel better and would give her an illusion of, no, he's not really dead, he's just sleeping, or we really can't kill him, this just puts him out of commission. But then you see another side of him, later issues where he really doesn't care about what she would think. He doesn't care about the humanity side. He is full on monster. So it's kind of he's a curious character to have in this series, and I like the fact that they keep pulling him in without his choice. He doesn't want to be there. It's the old "I choose you, Pikachu," type of member of this team where he's not. It's not his choice.
Yeah. I like in this whole sequence the Black Boris versus Frank. And the best part about that whole thing was, first of all, I loved how the whole battle played out, but at the end, when Frank's talking about how he takes no pleasure in this unholy business, and Amethyst has got this little smirk going, "Liar," which shows the growing comfort level between the two of them. I want to see them on the team together. I see them being comrades at arms. I think he has a lot to offer Amethyst that she can take back to her world with her. So I'd like to see I'm hoping that we see her go back to her own world, come back to this team, go back to her own world, come back to this team, and that ongoing development of a relationship between her and Frankenstein as friends. Because I see that being something... It kind of reminds me of Kitty Pryde and Wolverine.
Yeah. Definitely.
She kind of sees the side of him that other people don't see, and they develop a endearing friendship between them. That's something that's kind of unique that I really kind of enjoy.
Yeah, and I'd like to see Frank in her world.
I would
seeing
too.
How the people react to having Frankenstein there.
Yeah, it'd be great to see that kind of happen in that relationship. The Dead Man in the battle with Black Orchid, and we haven't really talked about her issues with the green and the red. Like how she's part of some experiment that made her some kind of hybrid that we're finding out more and more as the story's going on with her, and that Constantine has a file about her. I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it's senseless to ignore the fact that we're going to be talking about this in issue 14 and all kinds of other stuff that's going on. I loved that, like, she's got this secret that we have been slowly learning tidbits of along the way, but that Constantine has been exploring all along. And he knew more than he was hinting at when he first confronted her with it.
Yeah.
There's something about that's very much John Constantine. It's very creepy.
Yeah, well, you never ask a question that you don't already know the answer to.
Absolutely.
That's one of the prime rules of, like, any type of interrogation. You want to know already what's going on, but you ask them just to see how they react to it. That way you know where they really stands, what's important to them, what's not important to them, where can you get more information out of them. John already knew pretty much most, if not everything, about her. He knew her big dark secrets, but he doesn't open up with that. He opens up with the fact that, hey, I don't know anything. Well, let's see what kind of information she gives out.
And is she loyal enough to just tell me the truth? Because that's a test of loyalty right there.
Yeah, big time.
And that was something that I really enjoyed in the whole thing, because obviously she in many ways has shown that she does not want to completely trust. And I wouldn't either with him.
Well, I don't think any of them. I don't think any of them really completely trust Constantine. The only person who maybe does is Zatanna, but even she, knows there's a level to it. It's Deadman refers to him as Con Man. Or Britt. He never calls him John. He doesn't call him Constantine. It's like, okay, what's up, Con Man? He knows, what kind of guy Constantine is, and there is that, just that natural. He rubs people the wrong way naturally.
The final confrontation with Nick Necro I want to talk about, because there was that cool bit where Black Orchid as the shapeshifter pretended to be Tim Hunter, and I loved how that played out, because I don't know about you, I was thinking that there was some kind of swerve coming with all that, but I wasn't thinking Black Orchid. When it played out, I'm like, oh, that was cool, and it made sense, because I felt like a swerve was coming. So I saw a swerve. I will admit, I did not know what the swerve was going to be, though. So I'm not going to pretend that I was that far ahead with it. I was like, oh, it's going to be Black Orchid, shifting into Timothy Hunter. So I'm one of the people she was referring to that would fall for it again. But it was great. I loved how that played out, because Zatanna was fooled by it, Necro was fooled by it, Frankenstein was fooled by it, and it just added more of an element to all this because I don't know how many people on the team were clued in. I think it was really just a one-on-one conversation with those two. That's my thinking.
Mm-hmm. Well, one, I'm not going to throw this in your face going, yeah, I knew it was coming. I'm not going to do anything immature like that, but I knew from the beginning what was going on there. And the fact that they had done it the first time, with her using the shape-shifting abilities, that's why I knew it was coming again, because Constantine at the beginning of this issue kept saying, Orchid, you're with me. Orchid, you're with me. I got a plan. Are you ready? Talking to her. I'm like, he knew what he was going to do. And then that first sequence, when you see that team storming the final storm of the castle leading to the battle, first thing I did was I looked in that team, and I didn't see her present. I'm like, okay, she's the kid. And again, it was a great story. I'm not knocking how they did it, but I love the fact that this was when I pulled up, and seeing the people's reaction again was a great thing. And I think the entire team knew what was going on. I think that was Frank selling it.
That's great if it was.
That's how I read this whole thing. This was all Frank selling it. This was Frank making the final piece to eliminate from Necro. They need to do something. I don't think
I couldn't disagree with you more, because I don't think Constantine would trust all of them to act appropriately. So I think he just literally that's why I guess I'm going more of the route that he was pulling her with him, and it was a one-on-one discussion, because he wanted, I think in that moment there was a genuine chance of Frank knocking his head off. And John knew that was going to be a gamble that he was going to have to play on this one, but he needed to sell it so well that it would fool even Zatanna, but more importantly, Nick Necro, who knows him and knows he's a con man. And he needed to sell it so well that he would not have told them and taken the risk that they would mess it up. Because I don't think Constantine would believe. Do you think Constantine was sitting here saying to himself, Frankenstein's going to be a wonderful actor? He's going to totally be able to fool Nick Necro. I don't see Constantine doing that. And I don't see him trusting him enough to take on that role, that he would have gambled the mission on cluing Frank in when there was no reason to clue Frank in.
The only thing and on one hand, I'm going to completely agree with that statement where Constantine wouldn't trust. But on the other hand, if Frank was going to hurt you, he wouldn't have given, a guy like Constantine, if he honestly thought he snapped that little kid's neck, he wouldn't have picked him up, held him going, I'm going to smash your head. He would have just smashed his head. He would have just drawn sword and, attacked. He wouldn't have, if he
did attack right away, though, Jim. Take a look at the timing. Constantine breaks the neck. Frank's got his hand around his throat immediately. There was no delay. You're putting a delay in there that's not there. You're acting like he said this from a distance. His hand's on his throat. The only thing stopping any action that's happening there is Nick Necro jumping at the books of magic. That was the only thing that stopped any of this, which revealed everything immediately. But I don't see any delay here from Frank. Frank's on him immediately. So what I'm saying is I agree with you. Frank wouldn't have delayed. He didn't delay. Frank is on him immediately. I mean, there's no space in between.
Okay, the delay I'm talking isn't delay of Frank's actions. It's the delay it takes to say, Constantine, how dare you harm an innocent?
Dude, how is that delaying him? His hand's up at his throat. His fist is back. He's saying that while he's doing all that.
Yeah.
Like this dude.
I'm saying
Frank's multitasking. Frank is not delaying anything. You and I are seeing that completely. You're seeing some delay there that I just don't see present. Look at even the motion in the artist. You can actually see the hand whipping up to his neck, the hand whipping back. Frank is yelling out in outrage, not delaying anything. It's all one fluid motion. I don't see any delay anywhere there from anything he's doing. He's on him.
See, I say delay in a Frank standard, not a human standard, not our standard. Now, when I'm saying delay, it's still going quick.
What delay?
Doing it boom, 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 immediately. But he grabbed, lifted, cocked back instead of
one
grabbed
panel.
and crushed.
In one panel.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Frank was in on it. I think Frank was selling it. The other side.
Wait.
Hold on.
Hold on 1 second. When would Constantine have had the time to clue all of them in on what was going on? And why would he do that? That's the delay. See, you're putting a delay for Constantine that doesn't make any sense. Why would Constantine waste all the time to tell people that don't need to know that could potentially mess the whole thing up? Why would you do that? The honest reaction would be the one he would go for to fool Necro, because he wanted Zatanna to believe it too. Mm-hmm. Because he needed that to be completely sold. I guess that's the time. See, I think you're putting a time wasting into all this that doesn't make any sense to me. Because I think Constantine would be wasting time cluing them in for no benefit. And I think that's what makes him a total bastard, is the fact that he wouldn't care about their feelings. Because that would be the only rational reason for him to waste time to clue them in, would be so they aren't worried about what happens to Tim. That's the only reason why I could see him doing that. I guess to a certain extent he had to clue somebody in to keep Tim off of the scene.
Right, and that's when he tells the team. You go back to the couple pages where they're finishing up the group, they're finishing up the bad guys, and they're heading out. You got the shot is a back shot of everybody as they're walking towards where the books are stored. Constantine's like, this all goes as planned. We'll only get one shot at getting Z and the books back safely.
Okay.
You ready, Orchid? Always. They're all right there in a line. Right there. When she says always is when she morphs into young Tim, and Tim hangs back. And then the next scene is you see them all coming in together. I think the entire team saw her morph into Tim.
All right, if you go on that, and I can see that theory.
The other side, the other argument towards Frank knowing is they recovered very quickly from him attacking Constantine to drawing out his sword and having Necro at bay. With him, Bennett and Amethyst were all ready to make sure he didn't do anything after that.
Knowing that Black Orchid would be the one to already be a one-up on Necro.
Right.
Okay. I actually buy into all that. I buy into the argument. Because you're right, they would know then the Black Orchid would have been the one to stomp on Necro, and then you're right, they would be at ready for that. No, I buy into it. You're right. That makes a whole lot of sense. I like that. That puts Tim then in the position to open the books of magic for the first time, which, here's the part that I don't understand. He's preparing for the return trip home. I guess, why would Constantine feel here, because this does lead into issue 14 then, why would Constantine here feel that he was responsible for something bad happening to Tim?
Yeah.
Like, I guess, is it because you don't know the nature of the books of magic?
He doesn't know where he went, what happened to him, and also probably feels a little bit bad about, Xanadu. With her going through, she's disappeared as well.
Okay.
Because she does that last-minute jump and she grabs onto the gateway and she goes somewhere. So who knows where she is right now.
Now, that part I agree with.
Yeah.
I guess with Timothy, too, it's a kid, and where, what magical realm is he being taken to? Can he handle himself there? I said I was going to protect him. That's the part where I think Constantine does become endearing to me, because he does exactly what you said there, feel this need to have a code of honor, and he promised this to this kid, and he's got to make sure that works. And I think that's where we grunt and groan with him that, you bonehead and all that stuff. But those are the moments where you can see why a Zatanna then would be attracted to him, because he's setting up this quest not just to go after her, but also to go after Tim, because he made a promise to Tim. And he's very adamant about that, which I like. That's where he becomes a little bit more heroic. With issue 14, the art team is Graham Nolan, the great Graham Nolan, on layouts. And then that Victor, it's Drujiniu on finishes again. He was the one that did it with the regular artist. And I haven't noticed if that's a constant where he will come in on finishes. But I think that did really well, because you have them working together on this series, so it's got a tone that's similar. We had a different colorist on this one, Jeremy Cox, and I thought he did a very good job with the color work on this. It felt like an issue of Justice League Dark, even though it was a different art team. So I thought the decisions were really, really great.
You know what? I'm an idiot. I'm a flat-out idiot.
Why?
I've been thinking and saying that it's Xanadu who went with Hunter. It's not Xanadu, it's Zatanna who went with Tim.
Yeah.
I've been saying. I'm surprised you didn't notice. I was saying Xanadu the entire time.
I think maybe in my head,
I was thinking that it was she's the one who jumped. No, it was Zatanna who actually jumped with the kid.
I guess maybe it was because I was so focused on it being Zatanna that I wasn't noticing that you were saying. I didn't notice that you said Xanadu. Otherwise, I would have said something. And I don't know if that led me to say Xanadu or if I was saying Zatanna. I don't know if I started saying Xanadu just because you were saying Xanadu, but I knew it was Zatanna because he's going after that. He's separated from the girl who he's been in love with, and where I'm curious to see where this relationship's going to go with all this, because is the quest for the books of magic going to be the thing that comes between them again or not? I don't know. But I love this. They bring in this expert from the government on science and magic, and it reveals to us that the books of magic are not magical. They're some kind of machine. But the machine is powered by Timothy's magic. But then we get these quiet moments where we've got our sword-wielding ones, or our combatant in Black Orchid, who this isn't their thing. These kind of investigative things are not their thing. They're the ones, after the investigation's done and the mission's been set, they have to go after them. So they're trying to find out what to do with themselves to feel useful in this whole thing. So they go into the House of Mystery. And we get, Frank's kind of noble motivations for being here are, this mission's not done. We've got two of our party members who are lost. One of them being a boy, the other one being Zatanna. We were comrades at arms. It's not done until we are all safe and the mission's complete. That's one of the things that you love about Frank, is that he's going to be there. He's a rock. He's tried and true. This team needs that. He's a character that this team needs. So I hope he does stay. And I hope that's one of the motivations why he's here, because you don't have that on this team.
And I like. It's funny when they started going into the house. I immediately was like, "Dude, this is not a smart idea, guys. The House of Mystery is not a house I'd want to just wander around. Hey, what's in this room here? Just because we got super freaky level magic here. I wouldn't want to go into this without a super freaky level magic person along with you." And their magic people are all now busy doing other things. I probably would have just hung out at the porch, just hung out and talked to Trevor and just said, okay, twiddle my thumbs. I don't think I would wander around the House of Mystery just to see what's in this room. I don't think that's in my nature.
I could see you doing that, wandering around the House of Mystery just because it's kind of your thing.
Well, I would do it if you started wandering. Like, Sean, what are you doing, you idiot? And I'd be the guy running after his friend to keep them from doing something stupid, and I'd get pulled into something stupid.
That would be. Yeah, you're right. And I'd be the one laughing because nothing happened to me. It happened to you.
Yeah, all the skeletons and the fly people would be trying to eat me and kill me, and you'd be sitting there, hey, how's it going, buddies? Yeah, everything. You'd be fine. I'm the one who'd be toast.
And why didn't it happen to me? It happened to you instead. That's great. Yeah. And you know what? That's really, in fairness, that's the way it would go.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. I love that about this storyline, though, because to me, the House of Mystery, I agree with you, is everything you said it is. It's not a place you'd wander around. I love that every time you go through a door, it reminds me in some ways to the TARDIS to Doctor Who, in the sense that this got this huge scale on the inside of being something other than what it looks like from the outside. And that when you go into each room, you're transported into a place that you don't expect would be there, but yet it is, and it feels like it should be there, which is a weird thing to say, but it's supposed to be a puzzling place. Yeah. And I liked the exploration of it. I loved the Vertigo title, House of Mystery, when it was being published. It's kind of cool to see the House of Mystery in the present-day DCU being used in this format, because I think it really works.
Oh God, yeah, and I like this issue. And I don't want.
Oh no, I didn't think you. Yeah,
and part of the reason I like this so much is the fact that this is kind of like a calm before the storm. There's something really huge going on. They didn't want to do a nothing issue, but they weren't going to. They couldn't keep showing the other side of what they're, the investigation, the review, the building up, getting ready for the next team. So they got this really cool story where we get a lot of action, we get a lot of adventure, we get, again, some more great artwork, we get some more character development where we see these three hanging out, we get a little bit more piece of the Black Orchid puzzle as to who she is and whatnot. But it was a nice story. It was a nice one contained story of them exploring this crazy house. And if you have no history with the House of Mystery, right here, it's giving you a little bit of a taste of what's in store for you.
And each of those stories in the library was a room in the house, which means their sense of scale with the House of Mystery, it being smaller than it is. No, it isn't. It's huge. It's got thousands of rooms.
I like the fact that Frank was looking for a poetry book. I wonder if they have any poetry here. Just again, he's the warrior poet, man. He's the Renaissance man, literally from the Renaissance.
The end result of this story, like I said, was Constantine being in that confrontation with the Phantom Stranger, with Pandora looking on. There's a war coming, and you're going to have to eventually choose sides on that war. Which means this Trinity War that's coming up, how big is it going to be? Who's going to side with who out of those three entities, those three beings? And why? And, where is this going to leave the DC Universe afterwards? Because if you choose sides in a war like that, it's going to leave you afterwards resentful of the people who didn't side with your side in that war. So it's a big issue that, actually confronts a lot of potential things for the present day storyline of, it really teaches us a lot about the House of Mystery and how it works in this world. Teaches us a lot about, the fact that we're going to have to now in this after this prologue go after Timothy and Zatanna to bring them back. But this is only the first step towards a larger war that is looming over them, that is coming, where they're ultimately going to have to choose a side. And is it going to be with the Phantom Stranger or somebody else? I'm guessing, I would imagine them siding with the Phantom Stranger, right? The magic people?
As much as Phantom Stranger, you can side with him.
Right.
He makes it difficult to team up with him because he doesn't always help the people he's teamed up with.
But how do you feel about Pandora? And how do you feel about the Question, who is an enigma?
Yeah, the question's a question.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been waiting to use that one.
Yeah. It's an interesting story. I don't know. I love this Justice League Dark book. I love that the team makes me constantly question them, to the point where sometimes I'll question them and be wrong, like we discovered in part of the storyline. But I think that there's something to a storyline where you're constantly skeptical.
Yeah.
And I like that because it's different than anything else that I'm reading. I love Justice League Dark. It's a book that I'm hoping more people are trying and picking up. Because I think this issue 14 was a great issue. It's a jump-on issue. Because I think there was a lot of, Yeah, there was some epilogue material, but it's a prologue to where the storyline's going next. So if you're not reading this book and you're like, I don't have the budget to pick up a ton of it, but I want to try it, try 14. Because I really think it was a prologue of not only this, but of things to come in the DC universe. And you can get kind of, through that House of Mystery journey, I think you get a cool vibe of team dynamic on this book, which was really great. Because I thought it really explored Amethyst, Black Orchid, and Frankenstein well, which leads me to believe all three of them are going to continue to be around.
At least for a little while.
Yeah.
And one of the things I do wonder is John going to be able to get her back to her world? Because he says, oh, yeah, I can get you back anytime, no problem. Is he just saying that? Or because he's got the crystal, can he actually do that?
Did he say when?
No, he said, I can get you back, no problem. Well, she says, I think it was in 14, where she said, yeah, he said he can get me back anytime I wanted, or something to that effect. But, again, it's John, so you're not 100% certain he's being straight with her.
Agreed.
He may have been saying that, but I'll get to it. We'll be able to get it, no problem. It's going to take me a little bit.
It's funny stuff. Yeah, I love that book.
You won't get away from me this time, Buster.
Once again, our show sponsors are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Like I mentioned at the beginning, Gotham by Gaslight. This trade paperback's $12.99 regularly, 50% off, only $6.49. And remember, they're a Comixology digital partner over there. Make sure to do your shopping with DCBService.com. Over at InStockTrades.com, it's a great month to stock up on trade paperbacks. Things like No Man's Land. They have this new edition of No Man's Land. It's trade paperback volume 4 is out now. 50% off, only $17.49. This is one of the latest releases. iZombie volume 4. It's a great series if you haven't picked it up. 50% off, only $9.99. It's a Vertigo series. As I mentioned, this is a personal one for me. I'm a big fan of this Valiant relaunch. I don't know if any of you are fans of Valiant out there. I know some of you through Twitter, we've been exchanging back and forth that you love this. I want to shout out Exo Man of War. I just think it's a really great ongoing series. And Volume 1, By the Sword, is 50% off, only $4.99. That's over at InStockTrades.com. It's a 112-page trade paperback collecting the first 4 issues of the series. Great series. Good chance for you to be checking this one out. I just want to shout out show sponsors, InStockTrades.com. Remind everyone, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. Jim, I want to shout out our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or drnorge on Skype. We also have a wonderful Facebook group that we'd love to have you guys participate in, so please consider joining that. That's different from our regular Facebook page. Great participation there. I love the discussion that goes on there. Remember, it doesn't have to be limited to DC. Shout out anything, podcasts, blogs, things like that, any thoughts that you have about geek culture in general, because I think there's a lot of cross conversation going on in that group now that I think is really great, that just goes outside of DC as well. I love enjoying and being a part of the discussions that are popping up on the site there. Our next episode, Jim, Flash, Wonder Woman, Savage Hawkman, and Aquaman. So really packed episode, continuing our look at across the current DC universe and what's going on there. So that'll be next week. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and flaws and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan. What you do to me, Hawkman. The villains are closing in, be they Thenengard or Egyptian. Working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for backup.